Hey everyone, Douglas here, and welcome back to the MMT Macro Trader live stream. We're back at it for the most exciting 3 hours in all of finance, economics, the only place where you will hear whatever it is that I'm saying. I don't know, applied MMT, whatever. It really isn't the only place. There's quite a few of us, but that's the inside joke. It's definitely going to be the only... Go ahead.
Notice our introductions are going to get worse the more advertising we have.
Yes,
it's all downhill from here.
We do have ad rolls. It's not my fault. That is YouTube's fault. Apparently, YouTube needs a few extra pennies in the coffer. But anyway, I'm excited. We have a fun one tonight lined up. You can tell by the thumbnail that I am in a chipper mood. Jay wants it tighter. We'll see if he's going to get it tighter. We'll see if actually raising rates makes it tighter. That's what we're going to talk about tonight, amongst many other things. I know Bijou has a little bit of a backlog of interesting topics to cover. We'll talk markets a little bit. Did some interesting research. Posted on Twitter. We can go at it in a little more detail on the effect of the income on the overall spending, the interest income on overall spending. Economy just continues to boom. We'll talk about that for a bit as well. Housing sales numbers came out yesterday, just through the roof. I mean, the beating of expectations here is just unfathomable at this point. Well, I mean, not for us. We knew this would play out. This is right in line, but we continue to see amazing economic data play out. So we have a lot to cover tonight. But while people kind of stroll on in, Bijou and I will just kind of chat. Bijou, we haven't. We've been having some progress being made on some of the projects we're working on, but we haven't really talked about your week. How was your week, my man?
Yeah. It's okay. More piping came up. Having a big piping month. It's all pipes. And yeah, no, just sort of trying to tidy up the dashboard and stay on top of everything else that I'm supposed to be doing that I sort of procrastinating on, I guess. Haven't really written a whole lot on my economics blog recently. I've been on an AI bender for a while. One thing that the large language models, Chat GPT and everything did was just reignite my whole youthful period of exploration of consciousness and related metaphysics about whether you can have weak AI or strong AI or only weak AI and human condition and all of that fun stuff, because just so fascinating. Always felt really guilty about reading all that stuff, as a physics undergrad and then postgrad and then doctoral student, then postdoc. All the time I was sort of goofing off, reading all this other philosophy, and because to a really hardcore theoretical sort of physicist, it is sort of all related. It's all piped together with all sorts of channels, because the physicist's conceit is that they can understand the universe, using some mathematical theory or what have you. Understand the base marble of reality is how physicists would call it. And, so the physicist, the really arrogant physicist thinks they can understand it all. So it's like there's got to be some bottom-up story for everything. It's all bottom-up. But then, you read all this complexity research and a lot of other stuff. You actually broaden your horizons just a little bit, and you realize, that's not the case at all. There's all sorts of higher level things. But the one thing that I guess science, basically any science has never tackled is top-down causation. Because, suppose you can tell a story about everything happening from the molecules upwards, and what you're missing is explanation. you don't know how to explain these emergent phenomena, like, even biology, even chemistry. Chemists even have this philosophy that, chemistry is above physics because you cannot use physics to explain all of chemistry. It just doesn't work, It's too complex, and there's emergent laws of chemistry that just you cannot derive from physics. I don't know if that's true or not. I've never really. I actually didn't think that was.
It sounds like you're describing we need an MMT for physics, a top-down approach.
I think that's the way. That's where I've converged at, right? So all my major interests are sort of at the extreme ends, the highly macro, the cosmological, and the micro, and yeah, I have over the years converged. I guess I never really had a hard line ideological opinion on it either way. I just loved figuring out how nature worked and wanting to understand things better. But then the spiritual sort of arose, and I think there is top down, and I think there is top down causation of a sort in nature and reality. Even in physics, you can there's a way of thinking about it, which my kind of theoretical physics approach to understanding quantum mechanics actually has a sort of good angle on that. It's a very cool angle because it's very minimalist, but it just it's so delicious. I love writing about that, but the AI sidetracked me. The MMT trader stuff has sort of absorbed the time that I've got remaining, and so sort of that's where I'm at.
I gotta tell you,
I did get a lot of the AI stuff off my chest. I sort of just regurgitated a lot from my youth. And so, had my say on my blogs that no one reads, but that's fine. All I need to do is write it down. I don't need people to read it.
We got a ton of people showing up in chat. I want to make sure and say hi. We got a whole rundown here. Michael, welcome, man. Charles, welcome. Ty, back at it. We've got Monique, man, welcome. Josh, welcome back. Danger Zone. Gavin Van. I don't know if I've seen you. Maybe I have. I apologize if you've been here and you haven't said hi, but thanks for joining. TR, welcome back. Hey, Zeus. Back in the house with the good jokes, man. Hey, Zeus, the especially those Chris Christie jokes are where it's at. Okay, when we first started out, I didn't want to offend people, so I've always kept my own philosophical leanings close to the vest, as they say. But I think maybe hour 3 we can get into it if you want to on the physics side and or on the philosophy side.
Let me just say to Ty, I don't know how the chemists say that chemistry has emergent laws and properties. I don't know, but there is a literature on it, so it's sort of interesting if you're interested in that. They claim that putting electrons and photons together isn't just chemistry, and for emergence or so-called emergence, whatever you want to call it, people don't really understand it. The key thing that people sort of latch onto is quantum mechanics, because if you believe in all these collapse of the wave function type theories, then you can have top-down effects. You can at least theorize and dream about them. So that's one way that any high-level collective system can influence the lower level via the measurement, or you call it the measurement problem or the measurement process or the collapse of the wave function or branching of the multiverse or whatever you want to call it. So that's the way they do that. But anyway, maybe later on, third hour, if I am still conscious,
if you're still conscious.
Topics. But
it's like noon for you there. Like, what is it? What time?
Yeah. But I have this decay curve of food.
Yeah.
Because with the timing, it comes on just before I want to have lunch, so I just don't have lunch.
I get it. Yeah.
just going on a cup of tea. But I want to get the MMT stuff out of the way because there's still crazy people on Twitter and all this big talk, no data.
Oh my God! Don't get me started. I mean, actually, go ahead and get me started.
No, I want to get you started on that.
Go ahead.
I definitely want to tickle that one.
We were joking. Before we went live. We got to make a soundboard. Bijou wants some sound stuff, and I will definitely add. You want to know what really grinds my gears? God. Just show me some damn data, man. Like that's just what I want to see. I just want to see. Listen, if I know we don't have too many of the other side that watch this, but if for some reason you're hanging out here, just show me some data. Show me something that shows that explains your position. The worst thing is too is we're seeing just this like this big housing boom all of a sudden, right? And everyone has an explanation after the fact why we're actually seeing this housing boom. And I mean, I think the only thing that explains it is this massive influx of interest income. And it's just like, that's great. And if you piece it together after the fact, and it's not because of the channels that we all set ahead of time, that's fine. Show me some data then that at least supports your argument that says, hey, look, we just overlooked this data. That's what we didn't understand. But this is why, this is why demand is stronger than what we expected at this time. And I think that's the one thing to me that I need to see from any other side is explain to me why demand is so much stronger, showing up so much stronger right now than what was anticipated 6, 7, 8 months ago, because no one else is explaining that. I mean, people will say, oh, it's fewer, there's such a demand for houses, not enough houses being sold, yada, yada, yada. That's what we expected after COVID. That's fine, but it always ends with, and then there's really a demand that's growing for new housing. Well, then show me why everyone was so wrong about that. I mean, I thought that was the whole point of the interest rate hikes. They're going to kill demand, and yet we're seeing just this massive demand. Right. Show me the data. Show me the data. Listen, we have a ton of statistical tools that we can use to see if there's correlations. I've been working on. I've been going back to school. I've been going back to class, doing some deeper research. We found some really. I've just been kind of down the rabbit trail of some. Really deep statistical tools. CCM right now is kind of on my radar that I'm learning, which is so much so that I can't even think what the CCM stands for.
Causal something or other.
Causal something or another. But I mean, there's such a tool set there to understand. I mean, especially the difficulty is here's the difficulty when it comes down to really understanding what causes what, understanding what you get some data sets, some data series that's some time series, and you're like, okay, is there some sort of causal link here? We see a kind of what we call the interocular passes the eye test. Is there some sort of causal factor here? Well, the problem is all these systems are nonlinear. I mean, they're super complex. If there is some sort of correlation, it's clearly nonlinear in a kind of dynamical system. And so you have to use tools that really just kind of pick at that kind of sharing of mutual information between any two variables. And so that's what we're continuing to build, to just build better models. But that's like, give me that. I mean, don't give me don't give me other stuff that is just, well, that can't be right because it doesn't fit my model. Yeah, go ahead. I know. Go ahead. Yeah.
Often on Twitter, will just do the wiggly line correlation kind of number. I mean, it is Twitter, so we're not expecting people to like do what Douglas does and do a big long thread on it. And but you can find literature out there that attempts to explain it, from the central bank research departments and elsewhere, I suppose, if you look. But they're not. They don't really do it well on Twitter, as far as I can tell. Although maybe they do. I mean, they just don't spend enough time on Twitter to know. But certainly the responses that you get are just kind of, boneheaded. just cut and paste from the standard textbook, and this is all perverse. This is all just Larry Summers grotesquerie, blah blah blah. And so it's kind of funny and amusing. But the really amusing thing to me is, right, I was like, what? I'm thinking to myself, I got this on my notes that Douglas can read, so I'll tick this one off, I guess. It's like, I'm thinking to myself, why is Douglas doing this? It's like, I'm constantly like, dude, you're sort of arguing against, fools who just don't want to understand it. Clear that,
well, why do I do it? Do you know why I do it?
Actively don't want to understand. And I think I know the answer to this coming up. So I won't spoil it. You can tell me why you do it, and I'll tell you if that was what I was thinking. I've got it on a piece of paper here, so I'm not cheating.
Well, the real reason I do it for Econ grad is I actually think he likes to be humiliated. So,
oh my, oh damn.
So I'm just trying to help him out, man. He clearly likes. No,
that went into Drake wasn't prepared for. I was going to come along with this base thing, like, oh, you're just doing it for the promotion. And
no, it's exactly no. It really
education and everything, all this sort of stuff. It's good practice. If you don't do it, to win the debates, but you're doing it for the attention and the promotion of MMT, blah blah blah. But no, he comes in with the whole. He's doing it because this guy's into B&M.
Josh has it right. He just likes to be humiliated. And I'm just a good guy, man. I'm willing to humiliate him. I don't.
Yeah. That's real econ guy and Enrique and econ grad good dudes. Imagine if all these dudes are really into flagellation and making fools of themselves. Imagine if they came over to MMT. I mean, the thing is, right, they've got the intellectual capacity to understand MMT. So it's like they don't want to dig into it. It's just
I don't think real macro econ guy has that guy.
Yeah, but imagine, right?
Yeah, but okay, so somehow a miracle happens. Yeah.
Imagine if they come over, they would be, you think such good allies because that they have that little bit of the aggressive streak. They have that little sort of competitive mindset, not so cooperative. But when you want to change the world, sometimes you need a bit of aggression. You need a bit of people getting out, getting angry. Like I said last week, the civil rights movement. It didn't happen with any math or the race biology being debunked, racist biology being debunked, and the biology lab came out and said, okay, it's okay to go ahead with civil rights. It's like, no, people were getting angry and mad, and there's an interesting Canadian research. Well, there's a lot of researchers that talk about psychology and that, and how emotions are so important, and they're not like emotions are not emotional. If you know what I mean, it's like emotions are actually a core part of the human thinking process and how we sort of get things done. And of course, like anything, they can go off the rails. It's like being a logic nerd. You can go totally off the rails if you do logic, if you over logic things, because if you get one axiom wrong, then the whole structure that you've built just collapses. And it's like hilarious listening to people on YouTube, do these logic bro channels where it all sort of ties together, right? All the logical connectors are perfect, but there one or two axioms are just completely nuts. And anyway, so I'm thinking, really, like our econ grad guy, imagine coming over to our side, it'd be pretty cool. And they're welcome to come over anytime. Although, hang on, wait a minute. Just thinking, do we really want them? Because
no,
what if they're that sort of type of person? I want. It's like not a sex offender, but what's the one?
Are they predators?
It's soccer player. We don't want them on our team. Just it's like friends like those. Anyway,
I did see a question.
So what else?
And I want to address it, Charles, in terms of kind of where demand is at. So I got like a million windows open. Let me switch over to the correct screen.
That was a little joke for Michael Cruz.
Oh, I'm so unprepared. All right. We are.
What do you got?
Okay. Hopefully the right screen is showing. New houses sold. I can read. Huge jump, absolutely incredible jump from last month, and it was like I forgot exactly what it was above expectation, but we're seeing massive demands in housing. We went over this a little bit last week as well, but we had more data this week. I mean, just across the board. The other thing too is the surprise index, which I think is like a collection of various data.
Right.
How far off the expectation things were, just through the roof right now. So,
interesting.
What was I going to say? I don't exactly know everything that it covers, but look it up, I guess. But anyway, I mean, there's a massive surprise to the upside. And Charles, to get to your question, what's the MMT? What's the MMT argument here? And it's the argument that I made all the way back in December of last year. And it's the argument that I'll pull up the chart here. Stupid me, I remade all of this much better than I forgot to save on the way out. But it's that the deficit spending is just surging. The acceleration of the deficit spending is akin to what we would see after a recession. I mean, that is effectively what we are seeing, and it's almost all in part, certainly for the last 6 months or so, the really heavy acceleration that we're seeing is almost all in part due to the additional interest income that is being added on because of the higher interest rates. And in fact, one of the things that Warren Mosler always likes to add, and so I went ahead and added it to this chart, is the additional interest income that the Fed is paying out. So the Fed every month is paying out tens of billions of dollars to banks, and that is like a direct capital injection to the banking system. And so he always likes to add that out, like, hey, you guys are missing this. So I added that in to the chart, and it's 18%. The increase in the growth is 18% higher when you add that in, right? It goes from 6.4% all the way up to 7.55%, which, we just say it's, 1.5% higher, whatever, what would that be? Yeah, 1.25% higher. It doesn't sound like that much, but I mean, you're talking a massive increase in nominal terms, billions of dollars, tens of billions, waves of stimmy checks larger into the economy. And that is the argument that we were making back in $2 billion a week. Nick Gomez, welcome, by the way. Also, Daniel, welcome. You guys are I'm a little thrown off here, but Daniel, welcome. I think I've seen a few others pop in as well. Welcome, guys. But it's just massive acceleration. And again, we've kind of figured out it's that acceleration function that really matters to get things underway. And listen, guys, one of the arguments I made back in my 2022 post about 2023 is first wave was going to be the fiscal wave, and we are just starting to see. I mean, I think we're just starting to see the first push of the banking sector coming on. The banking sector has undoubtedly been a little shaky. It hasn't been adding that extra demand, and I am just starting to see the first wave of acceleration in banking data. So I mean, listen, we are gonna enter into the second half of 2023. Certainly one of the most unfamiliar territories that the U.S. market has ever seen. Because even back in the 1970s, the dynamic was completely different in terms of real deficit spending, right? So CPI adjusted deficit spending, right. We were in the negative. We are now in the positive, accelerating, and we're coming off of a bottoming endogenous banking cycle. We're going to see both thrusters on. I still think we're underpriced here, so much so that today I added to top out the amount of exposure that I will take on the S&P to the max. I added to the max. I'm over 200% exposed today. We saw I saw some of the internal flows that I really needed to see kind of latch on today's kind of rally. I know we were essentially flat or maybe even down just a little bit, but after yesterday's rally, after Powell spoke today, which we'll get to in just a second, I said, okay, I mean, I've seen what I've wanted. I knew we were going to get a little pullback in the last 2 weeks. We got that. And I think we're into we might be in another leg higher here. So I am levered to the as they say, and we're ready to ride this higher. Again, I've already been levered long going back to December. I'm just kind of topping off here, and I think we might be getting another leg higher. Maybe a little choppy for the remainder of this week, but we're ready to go, and it's all because of this interest income. And I think it's all because so many people were not understanding what was about to hit at the end of 2022. We were so underpriced relative to where the flows were headed. And now we're not. So that's my story for now, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, interesting sort of tightening. I guess it's a tightening of something. What's it tightening of?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
The labor market heating up the labor market. Think about all that from MMT's perspective. Is like, just consider this, everyone. All right, we're still massively underpowered. You think of still all the remaining unemployed resources that could be employed sustainably. It's like, you've got this sports car, which is the US economy, and it's got all these little, missing bolts and screwdrivers and spanners and things in the engine that sort of got left over from all this, financial engineering and central crankery and all this, right? Historical baggage, stupid policy, backwards policies like this, and like the Fed is trying to heat it all up with higher interest rates because they don't understand the floating exchange rate, right? So on a fixed exchange rate, you'd be sort of quote unquote running out of money, or running out of other people's money, which are your foreign reserves that you need to promise to pay, right? Or whatever your currency is being pegged to. And so you have to do the actual tightening, maybe hike interest rates or something, create more demand for securities. So there's less, cash being spent in circulation. That would be your hope, right? It's not actually probably sustainable, but because it creates other fragilities. And so you end up having to cut back your government spending, investments and things like that. Right, and so that's how it sort of would work on a fixed exchange rate. But you think about the USA today with massive underutilized resources. Still, I mean, in terms of just the raw numbers, like absolute numbers, the unemployed is just shocking. Like it's a crime, even though the percentages sort of look low if you're a Nauru fan. The actual numbers of people you could be doing useful work and getting paid decent wages for it is phenomenally high. It's like, so you've got this sports car that's got all this junk inside it. You just want to get rid of it, right? And then actually the US economy could be really powered. It's like so underpowered at the moment. And here's Douglas on the MMT macro trader here talking about how it's going, gangbusters. It's full steam ahead for the wealthy, for the rich, and via trickle down for some workers, not all of them, right? And so and people on previously fixed loan rates or mortgage rates who were at low rates in the past, they can wipe all that out now almost like overnight. You keep these rate hikes going, and so it's like so there's one story to tell about this being a very regressive but still a boost for the US economy, but still it's underpowered massively, and it's just a shocking crime. What you could be doing in terms of advancing your green transitions and everything. It's just not being done because people have all the thinking backwards. So anyway, just think about that for a while. It's insane. Yeah.
They do have the thinking backwards. That
like
is
I
true.
said last week in various languages. Yeah.
I'm looking up something. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Okay.
No. Yeah, I'm.
Anything in the chat to talk about? Yeah.
There was some stuff in the chat to talk about. Charles agrees, and that he's been trading that thesis, but he thinks that I think it's a good thing. Just to be clear, listen, I come on here to have fun and to pick on people who didn't see it coming. Cybernetics, welcome, man. I don't know if I saw you last week or the week prior, but man, welcome back. Glad to have you back tonight. But it is very aggressive. I mean, what's going on is very, very regressive, and it is a trickle-down situation. And if I had an opportunity to kind of speak to the public at large and kind of express, the real point in all of this, it would be something to the extent of, it goes something like this, like, look, it's very clear we can spend trillions and not cause inflation, because that is exactly what we have done for the last 7-8 months, right? We have handed off trillions to the wealthiest, and inflation has continued to fall, and we've had unemployment pushed lower at that same time, right? So it's very clear that whatever inflation took place in 2021 through 2022 was not primarily caused by the stimmies in 2020, but that it was multiple issues. Now, again, I've been very clear. The massive stimulus we saw in 2020 did a one-time price level adjustment. Agree. no disagreement there. But what we saw as inflation was not because in the inflation that hurt was not because of the spending, and clearly we've only seen an acceleration of the spending while inflation is coming down, and so I guess my point is we can still spend, but we can spend on production, we can spend on pushing employment to zero, we can spend on infrastructure. We don't have to be doing this trickle down stuff, right? We can do it in a progressive manner. That would be my point.
Totally.
That would be my point. That's what I would push home. In the meantime,
but also,
no one gives a damn, so we might as well just be riding this higher in the stock. I mean, people do. Everyone here listening gives a damn. Yeah. I know that. But in the meantime, look, I have a family. I have all of that. I'm still competitive. I still want to get it right. So just because there's this reality that all of policymakers have it backwards doesn't mean that I'm not going to take advantage of it and exploit it. Yeah. And from that perspective, that's where my victory lap is coming in. I got it right. They didn't. To me, that's where the good thing is. Obviously, I want policy to be different, where we can all win, where you don't have to have, some contrarian, sophisticated view. That's what I would want. But yeah, that's my point. Exactly. That's my point. Bijou, get a word in. Sorry.
Yeah, no, just let me amplify that point. It's like it's a good thing, all of this, in the sense that there's an asteroid that's about to hit the Earth, and it's a correct proof of gravity.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Like for some people, these interest rate hikes and post-COVID is a disaster. It's like apocalyptic proportions in terms of their own, family life and household, and if they've been forced to take out mortgages and loans recently at higher rates, in the future, the rates go down, they're going to have to be paying that off with much lower rates and lower inflation. Okay, that's a double whammy. It's like people don't understand the dynamical effects of the accelerations and the rate hikes and that. It's like it always creates these winners and losers, right? And so if you're going to do it in some way to whatever you think it is, when they think they got their foot on the brake, but we're saying they've got their foot on the accelerator in a very bad way, but still it's stimulus, and you take your foot off that accelerator and start sticking on the brake thinking it's the accelerator, you're going to be pro-cyclical again on the other side of the post-COVID inflationary era, and are you going to hurt people again? So it's like, for those who suffer, for the poor, for the working class, it's just pain after pain after pain, and for the rich, it's just I don't really care, or increasing returns, and none of us are in favor of trickle down, I don't think. But as far as I think MMT aware investors would have this outlook that's, I think, more classical. It's like, what you should be looking at is not money, but the real economy, getting things done. And so you're investing because you want to invest in industry and real goods and output and services and that sort of thing. That's what I would be doing from an MMT perspective if I was bringing in money. It would be for the purpose of spending. Like, not saving. I don't ever have a need to hoard or save money. I mean, unless I want to, like, quote unquote, save up for something. I want to save up for something. And we can talk about the, pensions and Social Security later, because there should be no need to save up for your retirement. But that's a totally different story. At the moment, there is, because, policymakers force you to save for the retirement. But the point is that, it's a good thing to be right about all this, even though it's like an asteroid, clearly coming in and destroying people in certain sectors of the economy. Because, you want the knowledge of this, gravity of the mechanics of the system to be understood, and then you can do something about not wrecking people's lives at the bottom of the economy. But you can't do that. You can't really do anti-poverty if you don't understand the cause of unemployment and poverty in the first place. So, I mean, you gotta go back and read Minsky, and you gotta read Warren Moser on what really creates unemployment. And so failure to do that is crime against humanity. And so winning in the sense of MMT being correct, even though it could be a disaster for some, but a huge bank time for the rich in nominal terms, even if in real terms, it's more or less par, because it's a currency gauging effect. That's what you got to do. So so bad things can be wins if it's like if it's helping test your thesis or your principles.
Which is why
testing your understanding out.
Which is why, going back to your point at the outset too, about why do I keep engaging with my detractors, and part of it really is because I do need someone to point at and say, see, you got it wrong because you believed wrong things that are demonstrably false, right? And I think there's there's a bit of a healthy way to do that, and I mean, obviously I'm sure someday I'm going to get to have a bad call, right? I'm sure it'll happen. I mean, it might take years, maybe decades, maybe even centuries. But at some point that might finally happen. And
are you going to be in the AI cloud by then?
And if I'm still alive, I'll take my medicine when that finally happens. But as long as people are good sports about it, I think it is kind of important to just point out, like, hey, look. And part of it too, here's the thing, man. I mean, listen, some people are just going to invest religiously, right? They're just going to invest because they think, you see these like particularly Austrians, right? It's a deep-seated belief in them, so they just buy gold no matter what, right? I mean, or whatever, right? I mean, that's just right. So I mean, that's just what they're going to do, and they're not going to think critically about it at all. But there are at least people who want to know how it works, even if they do have those deep-seated beliefs, even if they do have kind of their own presuppositional style framework where, that's just untouchable. Still, they can be persuaded by, okay, obviously reserves aren't being lent out. I'm realizing that now. We never had inflation during ZIRP, but we did once ZIRP was over, yada, yada, yada. Down the line, eventually I'm willing to convince myself that maybe something else is actually happening here. Maybe there's a different way to describe. And that's, to me, I think a little bit of dunking on the losers can draw those people in and at least get them to see the base case for MMT. And then all of a sudden you're a smarter investor and you think more intelligently about the world. You think more intelligently about the economy. And hey, if that means you vote better or vote more informed, that's a win in the long run. So.
You understand the government doesn't have the excuse, we've run out of tax credits, sorry, no green investments until we get more of our own tax credits back off you. Like, when people understand that, I tell you, it radicalizes people as well. My friend Steve Grumbine would say, normal everyday people who are bought into the sort of neoliberal Kool-Aid or mythology, but they're just background, they're not ideologues. They're just people trying to get on in life, families, working. Once they understand MMT, it just radicalizes them. It's like there's no more powerful knowledge understanding, oh, God damn, the government's not using our money. It's the other way around. It changes everything. So you don't have to freaking be a Marxist or an anarchist or some agitator like that. It's already enough just to understand MMT to become extremely radical and far more radical in your demands on governments who, agents of the people should be. Of course, the problem is they're not, because they're, driven by oligarchs. But all of that is, I always come back to this, all of that is because people don't understand MMT. Politicians can't, figure out how to, publicly fund things, including themselves. So they're always
they figured out how to publicly fund themselves, but
they figured it out in a certain way. They've got these public telephone systems and things and seats in government where they call their donors from. Spend a hell of a lot of their time wasting their time just calling up donors. It's freaking terrible.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. I get what you're saying. Oh, I thought you meant because they're inside information and Got Nancy Pelosi better returns than Warren Buffett since she's been in office.
Right, that as well. So they're funding themselves, privately. But the whole machinery of government, if it's funded by lobbyists, is just going to get corrupted.
Yep.
Because the market doesn't work in that sense. You're trying to use a market force, right? Trying to get private actors to pay to fund government because there's your discipline, right? There's your discipline on the government. They've got to come begging for money from the rich. And the rich, of course, know everything. They're the most wise people in existence. And so they're going to control government in the rightful Darwinian way, survival of the richest. And so you're going to get great government that way by having only the rich who know everything, who know what's best for us, running government, because the government thinks that, understands that they need to go out making these phone calls, wasting the quote unquote, oh God, I don't want to say it, taxpayers' dime doing all these calls. This is double. I'm getting very meta there. This is getting convoluted, but yeah. So all that carry on could just go away once you understand MMT. And once you understand MMT, you demand it goes away. You're not going to rest. You're not going to be satisfied until all that nonsense just goes away. It's like, so if you operate it like it's a competitive type of market for votes, and the rich get the most, have the most demand for their, or how am I putting it? How would you talk about in terms of selling it? The government sells votes to the rich, something like that. Is that the right frame? If you think it's all that way, but the government is the currency monopolist, well, isn't that something to think about? So you've got a monopoly government, monopoly on the legal system and the currency and so forth. You've got a monopoly that's acting as if it's some sort of competitive market for the voter, for the funds or whatever. Or it is a competitive market for votes. So that's what a democracy is. But I'm thinking about, who controls government and who the government thinks they need to get the money from. So all of that is completely screwed up, right? So, maybe in some sort of libertarian fantasy world, government could work like that, where you don't have a currency system. You just all back in primitive barter on, some little fantasy island somewhere, and everyone's trading bananas and coconuts. And then I think maybe a little bit of a competitive market for who gets to say what maybe might work. But when you think about it, what is that? That's a dictatorship of the proletariat. That's your libertarian government, because whoever is doing the hard work to collect the most coconuts and bananas or whatever is going to have, the most say, at least until weapons are discovered. Anyway,
weapons
are discovered. The guy with the biggest muscles gets the vote.
Chiron, man, welcome back. I don't think I've seen you in a few weeks, but welcome back. Good question. Where do the Austrians go wrong? I said they started thinking I might get at least a chuckle.
Pot of gold. That was where I was heading. Think about it, like all these Austrians and that they're hoarding their pots of gold, and then so later on in the future they'll be the ones that will have the spending power to get all this green transition and climate mitigation done, because they've saved their money.
Yeah.
So we'll all be dependent on them for that, right?
Yeah.
So everyone else now is like, dead or half dead under, wet bulb conditions around the world. And so the Austrians are going to at least be able to give them gold to do something.
Build gold buildings.
Build more gold buildings. Eat some gold.
God, how funny would that be if it turned out? I mean, I know they use gold in like computer components and stuff, but how funny would that be if it turns out like gold was like some truly rare earth metal that turned out like in some had some chemical property or whatever that was just necessary for the next generation of technology, and all the gold bugs were like, see, I told you gold was that all along.
Meanwhile, it's still under the ground in Fort Knox doing nothing because people are hoarding it because it becomes so valuable.
Chiron, I think it's been a long time since I've swam in the waters of kind of the philosophical kind of economics that the Austrians essentially only ever swim in.
They got markets wrong.
They have markets wrong, but
I think borrowed from neoclassical economics and then said, "Oh, it's too complex. Let the market sort it out because the market is the most efficient computer you can possibly have. It's beyond us." And so, yeah, they got all that wrong. Because once you've got a government, you've got a monopolist,
and that's what I think
that just throws all of Austrian economics out of the water. It's just rubbish.
I think,
in terms of micro markets and things, and like complicated markets where people are trading real goods, not financial markets. Financial markets are all parasitic, right? Just total unnecessary overhead. But in terms of real markets, real trading and all that, what sets relative prices? Well, I mean, MMT would have a really hard time explaining that because we're a macro picture. We only understand the source of the price level, not all relative prices. And so if you're talking about what the relative price story, what drives relative prices, then I think Austrian economics can be quite good to understand that.
Yeah,
but I don't know. So, Douglas, what's your view? Because you've got more of a background in that.
I really think for the Austrians, it starts with a individualistic standpoint, right? That it's a
bottom up.
Kind of the subjective is really the thing that gives value to anything. And if you listen to the Austrians kind of debate, kind of first cause sort of stuff.
They didn't get all that wrong, right? There's a lot of bottom up forces, like I said.
Are,
there's also top down forces.
Yeah, but that. I think when it where kind of the rubber hits the road, it becomes something that's a little bit more tangible. For an Austrian, all exchange is a buildup from barter. All exchange, and it's the same problem. I mean, it's the same failure of monetarism and neoclassical schools of thoughts as well. But it all builds up from a barter system, and I think the observation from post Keynesian heterodox MMT, and they don't put it this way, but I think it's the right observation, is that a monetary system is different than a barter system, and that society, what we would just call civilization, requires a monetary system. It is an element. It is part of what a civilization is. Now, when you get a breakdown of a society, you go to barter. I don't disagree with like the Austrian view or whatever, but that's the whole point. You no longer have a society. There's no functioning.
You don't even go to barter. You actually don't go to barter. You go to IOUs a lot.
You go straight up. I would disagree. I mean,
initially you go to barter.
No, okay. In societal-less groups, right? So I mean, we'll see this. A great example is in prison. Right. A great example is in prison, right? A great example is when there is no society, right? Then what you end up getting is barter. There's no such thing as a monetary system at that point, right? And what I'm saying is, if you want a society, right? If you want a collective whole, if you want things like democracy and government, as good as bad as it may or may not be, if that is something that's important to you, that you think would provide for human flourishing, a necessary component of that is a monetary system. A monetary system comes out of a collective society in some form, and what I'm saying is, when that breaks down, when that goes away, then you get, and I could definitely think this through more elegantly and put it in kind of the philosophical talk that the Austrians like. But yeah, I agree. When society falls apart, you get barter, but you don't move from society-less barter to monetary system. They are just two different expressions.
I got a different take on that.
Charles, they use money in prison. From what I heard, they use cigarettes. That's my point. They're not using money. There's no monetary system there. It is pure barter. That is. I'm in complete. I agree. They barter, right? But that barter.
No.
Go ahead.
No. I want to let you finish, and then I'll.
No. Go for it.
Okay, man. Okay, so the cigarettes are the money. In that case, you do have a monetary system. You always have a monetary system. If you go back in history, look at all the anthropology, it's like the only barter that you get in nature is with like kind of animals or single-celled amoeba who are moving energy around with no record of credits and debts. But in prison, you don't have the accounting records so to per se. You don't have like spreadsheets and all that because no one's bothering to, but you do still have an MMT system, right? You have someone who's like the kingpin or whatever. It's not, and it's never society-less, right? You don't have humans without society.
Okay. What I'm saying, if you can, in a self-contained situation where you have a breakdown of society, I get these.
It's still a society, right? It's still a society. You say breakdown society, but it's still society. People have money.
I'm defining society, I think, a little differently, but it's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. But even then, even in this, society-less, let's call it society-less society, you still got money. You still got records of credits and debts, who owes whom what, and it's you don't recognize it as like a state currency. You don't recognize it as not a particular token unless you use the cigarettes as a sort of, or rocks or pebbles or whatever. So I'd agree with Charles about that. You can use a physical token for the accounting records. But in the end, very quickly, like the first day, people are still immediately think in terms of money. If they barter and someone's got something that the other person doesn't quite have, but they can promise it, as long as it's a promise to pay, that is money. And what is the money? It's the accounting record in people's heads. And so I don't think you can find ever in human society where people have not had an MMT system of some sort. It's a matter of what drives demand for that currency, what drives demand for the cigarettes, who's imposing the sort of token as being the cigarette. That could be an agreement between these individuals, Austrian individuals, in your society-less society. In that case, I would say, and this is where I agree with Douglas and Charles, in that case, I would say the society-less collection, the set of things, is your government, right? All of the people in this sort of breakdown society, they become the government. It's not very functional, right? And you don't have apparatus that you call the state or the government or anything like that. But you've got accounting records, and so this is like core MMT sort of stuff. You go back to Randy Ray and Michael Hudson and all that, and David Graeber, and they'll point this out. Records of debt obligations, right? Who owes whom what, is the money in the. This is a very sort of deep anthropological type of MMT that a lot of people don't really bother reading or understanding. But to me, this is what makes sense. Right? This is why MMT is totally correct, because it's more correct than people imagine. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So.
I think listen.
Everything Douglas said, I would agree with in terms of that. That's the sort of the sentiment that Douglas was expressing there. I'd agree with. It's like that's not really sort of hard state money. It's much softer, much more sort of psychological effect. And all I'm doing is kind of redefining things for Douglas. In order that MMT becomes correct for all time.
All right.
No. I'm a total MMT fan.
Yeah, no. All right. Here's the thing. In prison, listen, I realize prisoners work and they might produce something that gets consumed outside of prison. But in terms of the actual contained prison ecosystem, if you will, no one in that system is producing anything for exchange, right? There's nothing, they're not producing anything that they're going to consume or that they're going to exchange, right? Same thing when you see like major collapses in government, right? When you see major collapses in government and it's just two competing war factions that take over a country, right? That country ceases to be a society in any way we would say society is, right? In those situations,
People are still producing stuff. What do you mean? What do you mean by no one's producing anything? Prison is an artificial system. You don't have a prison in a breakdown society. Everyone
but I mean, effectively in a military. I mean, in a society, in a situation where it just becomes a war-torn country. I mean, I understand there's still a vestige of society left, even in the most war-torn countries. The argument here's what I'm trying to say. The argument that the Austrians. By the way, Tim, welcome, man. You've been in chat. You've come to the right. If you want to let go of some anger and frustration at MMTers. You've come to the right place. I'll play along for a while. Above all else, because I appreciate the engagement. The engagement helps the algorithm, which means I'm getting more exposure for MMT. And look, I've been right, man. I have been right. I've been so right. Bijou, earlier you were saying that you have no desire to save. We should spend. Holy cow, have we been spending in my household? Holy cow, have we been spending in my household? Man, my wife keeps seeing how much money we've been making in markets, and it's like, oh, great, Doug, great. Yeah. Let me spend more money. So we've been doing our MMT part by not saving. I'm sorry, she's been doing her MMT part by not saving spending. So you've come to the right place. You can dog on us all you want, but my track record in Hans Niemann style, it speaks for itself. That being said, going back to the MMT Society stuff. Let me say in the Austrian stuff. The point I'm trying to make is the Austrians love to say like that the story begins. Hell yeah, man. Monique, 72% year to date. We've had some people sign up for MMT Macro Trader who are brand new. They signed up this year, and they're kicking ass, and it feels good. Yeah, you know what, Tim? I'm not making money off the poor. I'm making money off the poor idiots who decided to follow the advice of the Austrians, of the monetarists, of the neoclassicals. So yeah. I mean, if you took their advice and you're in cash, and I've been able to exploit that, you're the idiot for doing that in the first place. Yeah, I will. I'll take that. Yeah, I'll take that. Yeah, I'm not making any money off the poor. Jeez, oh Pete, I've expressed very, very clearly that this is so regressive. But what? Just sit on my hands? Yeah, not take it.
People come in and just see some of your hot takes now and again. They're not reading everything that you said in the past. Yeah. So you got to forgive people on Twitter if they, sort of attack you.
Actually, hold on. Everything. No, actually, I'm making money off the rich. That's actually I'm Robin Hood here, baby. I've actually made money off the rich. Yeah. I fucked the rich. There you go, Tim. There you go.
Yeah.
And now I'm giving it back. Now I'm giving it back to the people in terms of knowledge and understanding. I think I just swore too loud. I think my wife is. This live stream is free. What was I gonna say? Good. I don't even know where I was going. The first thing that pops in my head is.
I wanted you to finish. You're gonna tell me about the Austrian.
Okay. No. They don't have it. No, they don't have it right. I'm not saying the Austrians have it right. What I'm trying to say is where the Austrian story begins, at least from explaining the, listen, dude. You know what? I've never banned anyone from my channel, but this is absolutely where it's gonna be. So.
I don't mind Tim as long as he's only
I'm not
every 10th.
No, I'm not going to deal with anti-Semitic stuff. I'll remove that.
Oh, did he do an anti-Semitic?
Yeah.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, WWE fan. I deleted that as well. I just don't want to give any. I just don't. I don't want to give any more any more eyes. Anyway, it's fine. It's deleted. Anyway, come at me all you want for the MMT stuff, but geez, oh Pete's like grow up, guy. You're not banned. I just deleted that. One warning, and then I will ban. But I'm not gonna. I've never banned anyone. I've never banned anyone from Twitter either. I mean, I've never banned anyone. But there's no need to go anti-Semitic goofball.
Jeez,
Josh.
I don't even know.
Josh, I
want to know what he said now.
Josh, I hope. Josh, can you put a message in chat? Okay, good. I wanted to make sure. That you could still chat since I deleted that. I just didn't want to bring any more attention to that. All right, I'm done talking about it. We're gonna move forward. Let's see, Austria. Okay, the Austrian story, their story begins. Their money story begins with barter moving to a monetary system, right? So for them, that's the jump that has to happen. What I'm trying to say is that jump never happens, right? If when society emerges, it emerges with a monetary system as we understand. And when I say monetary, I mean IOUs, right? A monetary system has nothing to do with commodities. It has everything to do with IOUs.
Right.
Now, my point is, because their counter argument will be, oh, well, we see barter systems all the time occur, in nature, if you will, right? We see it occur we see the situations occur in prison. We see the situations occur when, war-torn countries and stuff like that. And that's my point, is that those cease being societies, markers of societies, right? In prison, there's not an exchange happening of goods and services, right? Someone's not growing wheat, and someone's not growing wheat, and someone's not.
Can we get away from the prison? Because I agree, it's a little closed, fake system.
Okay, even in like war-torn countries. But that's what I'm saying is those things will never. What we would call a monetary system. I'm just going to for our purposes, monetary system is IOU system. Okay, a monetary system is a debt money system, right?
A monetary definition.
A monetary system can never emerge out of a barter system, right? It just that doesn't happen. The minute the monetary system comes about is because you now have a society, right? So that's the way. That's what I'm trying to say. So I'm not trying to say that like accounting can't apply, and in a kind of a fallen government situation or a prison system, or if 5 people get lost on an island, right? But so that's kind of the point I'm trying to get at, and it's to try and get underneath the point where the Austrians want to go, is say, hey, look, and then from there they're going to say, yeah, and that's why real money is savings is putting coconuts under your mattress, right? And so that's kind of and Nicholas Gomez, it's kind of my argument, is that these things are just two different explanations, and when society begins, so too does a monetary system.
Okay. I still got my head around the bit of a logic bro argument about the prison system being not a producing system, because it's internal. I wouldn't. That's an artificial contract. You don't have a prison in a societyless society, and so. But what I would say about that Austrian barter story is it's kind of I want to agree with you for the most part. However, I'll come back to what I said earlier, and this may address Charles's question in the chat. I'm not sure. Let me know if it does. All I would say is that it's not the case that the money emerges out of barter or even anything. The money, the accounting records, who owes whom what, the IOUs have always been there. And you cannot find in history any time, any period in archaeology where there has not been money. The earliest written records are of debts owed in cuneiform tablets. So some people even say it's like the need to have accounting records of who owes whom what. And generally, broadly, that's what I mean, Charles. I mean it in the broadest sort of sense, that it doesn't have to be official. It doesn't have to be from a government, from a state, from some authority. It can just be in a little old village somewhere. Someone's keeping tabs of who owes whom what. And if they're really small, if they're like 100 people or whatever, no central authority is needed. Everyone knows who owes whom what because they all know each other. And so you've got money in that sense before you even have barter, or almost sort of at the same time. It's just so primitive, so primitive. You look at the anthropology, not the financial archaeology, or not the economics history. It doesn't go that deep, okay? But if you look at anthropology and human psychology and study of society, like David Graeber, although I don't think he went far back enough, but he did a pretty good job. You'll see that the money, or the records of who owes whom what, the IOUs, have always existed, almost since we've had language, and may have even pre-existed language. We don't know, because in like ape or chimpanzee or bonobo societies, I'm no expert in this area. Maybe Jane Goodall could do a better story than me. But I think in some very primitive sense, I wouldn't call it money, but I think they have IOUs. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. But I think it's very. It comes from friggin' biology. It comes from the fact that that we do live on a finite planet with limited resources. Once you get some sort of community, like, you know, ants or bees or whatever, you find that you have to share things around. You can't have one person dominate everything, otherwise they're going to kill off everyone else. You lose a lot of variety. You lose robustness when you start having, you know, dominance from one particular group or one particular, you know, sort of individual who just wants to hoard everything and grab it all. This doesn't work. Things break down. And so this idea of sharing things around and owing someone something because you've done something for them, you've given up some of your energy for them. So later on in the future, you give back. It's like a sort of tit for tat. That's another primitive thing from game theory. That's not biology, but it's just primitive logic that, you know, games work out that way. Tit for tat being one of the most successful strategies and the most simplest for playing iterated prisoner's dilemma. And so even from the logic, from the biology, from the anthropology, the money, the records, the accounting records in people's heads is so primitive. I don't think you've ever not had it. And you can't you can't show me any records in history where we have not had money. I challenge you. And same with that dude in the chat earlier, you know, if he wants to go off on something, show me, you know. It's like what Douglas said earlier. If you want to argue about data and about the fiscal flows and the time series and their effects, you know, show me. I'm happy to read anything. In fact, I did read a few things the last week. You asked me earlier about what I did over the week, and it's some of our affiliated friends. I'm not sure if they're Patreons, but some of the friends that we have on Twitter and other, they were asking me questions. So I did a bit of that sort of reading, but I'll do the reading if you give it to me. Not that my eyesight as I get older is actually up to it, but you give me something interesting to read and give me a really good argument for your point of view, and I'll read it. But anyway, that's my story on the money story. It's far more ancient than you think. But if you don't want to say that the mental content, the memory in people's heads is money, fine. Okay, you know, I don't want to push my case too hard. I'm just defining money much more broadly and using an MMT sort of a definition for it. So that's summarizing that. I don't disagree with Douglas on most of that, but I have this different narrative to tell, and I think it's a good one. And I don't think it's correct. I think it's correct. But yeah, anyway, I still can find things to agree with the Austrians in terms of some of their analysis of how, you know, complex interacting individuals work without a sort of government, without a governing layer. But it's what bugs me about the Austrians is that you really can't really find a lot of that in a very large society. Maybe you can find some of those dynamics in a small society, but then I know they're going to get an argument with me about how we define money. And you know, I don't really like arguments about definitions because they are what they are. You can define money the way you want. You can say gold is the money. You're talking in a completely different parallel universe to me, for one. But number two, you're not going to understand our current monetary economic system. You're just not going to be able to understand it. Because currency isn't the gold. Currency isn't the bread that you produce. It's not cigarettes, not anything like that. It's the records of who owes whom what. And it's totally, excuse me, you can bleep this out, but it's totally effed up because, thank you, because people don't understand it and they think in terms of it's real stuff. It's a claim on real stuff. It's a claim. It's an accounting record that you can use to redeem for something. You don't understand that, you're not going to understand a lot of the monetary economics, and you're not going to understand why it's all totally enshittified and is not working in the public interest. So I reckon you better understand MMT and stop groaning about it as being this sort of, you know, rebel sort of system, and start just thinking seriously about how you need to rewrite all your Austrian and neoclassical textbooks to get it right. Well, if you do rewrite your textbooks to get it right, you may not want to call it MMT. In fact, I'm pretty sure they won't call it MMT because they just now got this sort of visceral rejection of the whole idea of these three words, but these three letters. But in any case, I'm sure they'll converge on what are basically MMT principles. I mean, but it's economics, right? It's complicated social kind of stuff, and so it's going to require a little bit of giving up your ego and giving up on what your past received knowledge has been from the textbooks and from the academic elites. You're going to have to give up a little bit of that. I always thought that Austrians, libertarians, would be quite prepared to give up a lot of those textbooks. So it sort of amuses me that they just have this instant reaction against MMT, that MMT is wrong, and it's not prepared to really sincerely explore it and sincerely investigate it. It's all a bit sad. Anyway, probably gone on way too long on Austrian stuff for my knowledge of Austrians.
No worries. We have we've got some people in the chat that I'll say hi to real quick. Roar Nora, man, thanks for the congrats. Good to see you here tonight. Eugenio, welcome. Welcome. Ken PDX, welcome back. Bijou, I'll let you get back at it though.
Yeah. So I don't know. Roar Nora just mentioned something. I would say that metal matters for making things, and authority is definitely important. Right, that's the MMT. The currency monopoly is the government, and but if the government doesn't understand the monetary system and it cedes authority to their rich donors and lobbyists, then you're going to shitify it. You're going to stuff it all up, and the psychology of metal, the psychology of the metal being some sort of perceived value beyond what it really is, and to a sort of metal worker or engineer or whatever is a big problem, I think. When people say that, people come at me and say, oh, well, you haven't understood power, you haven't understood authority, you haven't understood the psychological pull of the metalists and all that sort of thing. I'm saying, no, I've understood it correctly. I just want to get the MMT story out there because it's not understood, and it can change the way people think. That's what I'm all on about. We want to change the way people think about these things. So if you have a fetish for like paper, notes, or coins or gold, that fetish is, well, I don't know, man. In our current system, that fetish might do you some good because it's going to be, in a sense, good for you to hoard, save those tokens, and gain power and all that sort of thing. And I think the MMT, more sort of progressive leftist story, doesn't have to be that way, because the government has unrecognized power over the system that it monopolizes, and should be forced by a democracy to use it for public purpose, not forced by donors and rich oligarchs to use it for the narrow interests of the few. So yeah, I agree with all that stuff about the psychology, the metal, all the false, the fetishism and all that. It's all real effects. It has really damaging effects. But what we're saying is the MMT story has a potential, a massive potential, to really rewrite how our economic systems are organized and how our political economy functions, and to make it just far more democratic. Alrighty, I'm getting a dry mouth now, so I got to stop talking. But that's what I'll say. If anyone want to come at me with that, don't do it. Don't do it on the chat, please. Write to me in a long form. I like reading long form, well reasoned, thought out stuff. It's triggering for me to respond to the chat or on Twitter if someone's trying to poke me, because I'll go off on these long rants. But
I'm the exact opposite.
I'm missing a lot of nuance, and you guys are missing a lot of nuance too. And so it's better to have a long form chat. Email me or something like that. I love getting a good email.
I like
old school. I like
video.
Go to letter writing. I get my fountain pen out and write you a nice letter.
I like video that I can play at 2x speed. That's the only way to.
That's calligraphy of a different nature.
Michael sent me a video this week, and the guy talks slow, so I could go full 2x speed. It was like 48 minutes, but yeah, right. I got it in 20. So it was on degrowth.
Oh yeah,
it was on degrowth.
Oh yeah,
it's on degrowth.
God damn, degrowth.
Yeah, maybe that's something we can.
The degrowth, I think Michael Cruz would be good. I think the language is a huge problem to me. I think we've got to grow in a lot of areas, and we've got to degrow. I wouldn't even say degrow. I would say
that was
stop.
Michael, his take was regrowth.
Okay. Sounds all right. Was this some academic talking or what?
Yeah, I don't know what the guy's name was. I don't know. He had like an accent, so I couldn't go full 2x because of his accent. But yeah, so I got to the end. I can probably find it while I talk. But I got to the end of it, and his 3 recommendations. Oh, they were terrible. They were terrible. I mean, he understood.
Oh, no.
Yeah, he understood.
He's ruining the whole movement.
He understood.
Jason Hickel and.
I mean,
it's quite good.
It's probably. Yeah. I'm going to bring it up here, and it's probably going to be something that like everybody knows, but I'm just completely oblivious to. And it's. I mean, that's the problem. It's like I got into MMT because I wanted to learn how the markets actually worked, and only MMT explained it. In terms of way to actually analyze it, and got it right. And in the meantime, like there's a bunch of progressive things, and very important things. Jorgen Randers. That sounds right because he was like he definitely had like a. Limits to grow. Oh, what? Okay, yeah. Anyway, how do you know what I'm watching, Ty? Are you logged in? Are you logged into my? Oh no, do you have my watch history? Do you see how the embarrassing music that I listen to?
It's a network effect, man. You've noticed this on your all your Google accounts and whatnot. They're all sort of interlinked, so they're collecting all the data.
Yeah, and then
Ty just
adds.
Ty does.
Yeah,
you're going to get the same recommendations. I guarantee it.
All right, so it was the talk called limits. I'll just type in growth. Yeah. Hopefully, growth was in the name. Yeah,
I reckon clicking on a few Sabina Hofstadter videos brought both of us to Angela Collier, the rogue astrophysicist, and her funny takes.
I did find the video. Give me 1 second here, and I'll pull it up. We're going to talk.
Eventually, you click on a few things that I do or follow me. You might eventually get some dude coming up in your recommendations from Total Running Productions. There's some really awesome athletics content. I love watching that stuff.
So here was
here we go.
Here we go. This is I'm gonna just reverse. This is the guy Jorgen, and these were. I mean, you can see actually. I quite literally stopped the speech early because.
Okay.
I stopped it right here. I had to. Everything made sense. I get it. Like, look, we've got a hard cap in terms of what we can do. I mean, in terms of growth, and eventually, we're gonna burn the planet up. But he gets to this point, like everything's good. All right, we've got to make a change, all that sort of stuff. And he comes to these 3 things. This is the only way to fix it. I did rage quit. Everything. Okay, Ty. Everything he said made sense up until the end, and I just couldn't.
Until the end.
I just couldn't. Okay, so he says higher taxes, right? How can the government pay for what he calls the giant leap? Okay, let's just say I'm in agreement with the giant leap, right? I mean, I don't have the time or the energy to go through everything step by step to see if I agree with it, but let's just say I do. Higher taxes, right? That you gotta tax the rich, and he says that this just isn't. This just isn't a feasible thing. More borrowing,
politically,
right? More borrowing, and that it's going to shift the real cost to the future generations. The only reason that I'm able to listen to this stuff, like when it gets to this part, I actually listened to it while I was working out. And I built we finally built like a whole home gym. I got a rack, got the heavyweights, got the whole bit, And he's like, oh, we're gonna pass the costs onto future generations. I'm like, no.
Oh my God.
So so I'm like, come on, put a few more plates on there. This makes gets my heart rate going. Ugh. So I mean, in that sense, I get pumped. Yeah, it's good for the workouts, but then the doctor has to give me more medicine. And then he says central banks printing money. No. And I mean, the whole thing was just like, I mean, essentially his point was like, these are great ideas, we can solve it, but we're screwed because the choices are all untenable, either from real constraints or from political constraints.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here thinking, no, man, oh yeah. And then he goes on, this is the worst part. Oh man, then he goes on. No, never mind. He didn't say that in this. Never mind. This was a different one. No. Either way, this was the three things. I'm like, no. Like it is the only thing he gets right is that it is it's a political will thing. I mean, that's what it is. It's a political will thing. And at this point, there's no political will to do this stuff. And there's just that's just what it boils down to.
Rowan Orr and Charles in the chat might say you want hard money to do this, but you don't. You want soft money because you want to focus politicians' minds. You want to focus the people who have real power. Well, first of all, you want to stop them being reliant on people who have quote unquote the money. You want to totally remove that from the system, break that, cut that circuit out, cut that pipe out. It's all pipes, you see, and you want to operate a hard money system so that you can focus your thinking on the real resources. And so, yes, this cost to our grandchildren is not having a freaking livable planet. It's a real cost.
Yeah, that's a real cost.
So the debt is a real debt. Is like if you don't invest and use your available energy now to make production sustainable in the future, because it's not sustainable. Then there is a debt to the grandchildren, but it's a real debt. It's not the monetary debt. Let me. You're still going to have to use tax credits or something to drive the demand for a currency to employ people to do what society wants. Plus, you want to get rid of all bullshit jobs and all the wasteful work that we do that is totally unnecessary. And a huge amount of that, what is it? The 10, 15% of GDP is devoted to just purely parasitic financial activity and the bureaucracy or the tax compliance stuff and all this other compliance stuff that is totally unnecessary and just a waste of human lives. To get rid of all that stuff and you can employ labor to do good things. And the way to not constrain yourself artificially is to use a soft currency. Let me be a soft currency.
Let me jump in here because just as a thought experiment, Charles, for like the hard money thing versus the soft money, right? Let's tell me where this thought experiment goes wrong. But let's say, and what I was going to use is like the trope of like the asteroid is about to hit Earth, but let's do something a little bit more fun, right? Let's say there's an invading alien species about to hit the shores of Earth, the atmosphere of Earth, and we know that they're coming because they broadcast out ahead of time. So their ships can travel at half the speed of light or whatever, but their broadcast hits us at the speed of light. So we know that they're 50 years out or 10 years out or a year out, whatever it is that they're out, right? So we're about to get invaded, right? And we know this is coming, right? Or maybe we get some, okay, so we have this ahead of time, right? If we're in a hard money situation, right, we have to then, if we then say like, oh my gosh, the aliens are coming, right? That means in order to get battle ready for the aliens, we have to first go dig a hole out in California using the real resources that could be building anti-alien spacecraft to stop the invasion, right? So, our first 3 months is us building or digging a hole out in California to get the hard currency to then put it into the coffer so we can then tell the same people that we just had digging a hole out in California to get the gold to go build the ships, right? So, I mean, it's a wasteful step. And so,
wasteful.
Well, and then you waste the next 6 or the next 3 months because they have to take it from California and put it in a hole in Kentucky or wherever, right? So like they actually have to, bring it across the Rockies and into the eastern half of the U.S. So now we're 6 months behind.
There are some other money cranks who talk about hard currency in a different way. So they talk about hard money being something more like Bitcoin. I had a guy on
yes, Bitcoin digitally.
Brett Scott's Substack who was on about that, and honestly, I wanted to read his stuff. I just didn't have the time.
I like the tiny aliens invading us. That's good. Keep going though.
But that's a good. Yeah. So some people think like Bitcoin is hard currency, but
okay. Let's even take Bitcoin then. Let's even take Bitcoin. Let's just say, Charles, I'll repeat the thought experiment, right? So we're getting invaded by some aliens, and Bitcoin is the hard currency, right? And so what we need to do is we need our smartest scientists to develop intergalactic lasers, right, that can shoot from Earth like a Death Star, right? And this is just super deep. Bijou is no longer able to work on the MMT trader because he's needed
like from the expanse.
Yeah. So he's got to do this, right? But because we need Bitcoin, right? Our smartest scientists are going to first create quantum computers to decode the Bitcoin, to mine more Bitcoin, so we can then finally have them work on the project of creating this laser. My point is, in a soft currency economics system, you can just meet the need of society immediately. And then it's a political decision. That's more importantly than anything. It's a political decision. Maybe the political decision is we want the alien overlords, right? Maybe they come and they're like, hey, we're going to take you over. We're benevolent. You're going to do exactly what.
From our own self.
Yeah. So I mean, but it is a political decision. That's the thing. It's a political decision. It's not artificially imposed constraint. It is a political decision.
That's right.
All right, I'll digress.
Yeah, the hardest hard currency. We've already got it. Okay, we've already got it, guys. It's atoms and energy. So you can't make more with atoms that you don't have, because you can't create or destroy hadrons except in virtual processes. And you can't extract energy out of the quantum vacuum. I don't know if people of all these twits in the sort of new age space actually realize it, but the problem with quantum vacuum energy is that there's actually too much of it. It's like it should be zero, and physicists don't understand why there's a little bit of it that's drive the acceleration of the expansion of the universe. But yeah, I mean, the hard currency is energy and matter, and we can only do with that what we can do with it. And the other hard constraint on that is thermodynamics, and so you have to eject a lot of that out to space. Otherwise, you're in a closed system and you're just going to suffer from a heat death. So we've got to constantly eject the waste heat out into space, and suck it in from the roughly point source that's the sun, and that's the way you escape that sort of particular hard constraint. As you can keep growing. Point is, you can keep growing. You have to, because in an open system like that, you're constantly dying. You're dying all the time. Things are getting destroyed all the time. Yeah, and so you grow and you die at the same time. It's a dynamical system. And so the hard currency, I think, is energy. And the other thing about MMT is that although it's called soft currency economics, in a way, it's kind of a hard currency by political choice, because you have a labor buffer. It's the MMT system with tax credits are basically, if the policy is correct, which it is in most countries, it's a labor standard. So your currency is worth whatever your labor can produce. And so so it's a soft currency in the sense that if you can educate your workforce and increase their productivity with mechanization and the AI tools and all that sort of thing, if you can increase the amount of good stuff that a worker can produce in a unit time per unit worker, then you have automatically appreciated your soft currency. But it's hard currency in the sense that it can be seen as tied to labor. Your labor, it's like a labor standard of currency instead of a gold standard. And that's a good thing, because the more you educate your workforce, the better your currency is sort of going to work. But anyway, in any case, the MMT, the soft currency system, allows the policymaker, the government, the currency monopolist, to set the price level and to stabilize things that way as well. So why would you not want to do that? Have sustainability and full employment. Right? There's no need to use a hard currency to limit employment. You can fully employ people once you understand that people can do anything that's possible to do sustainably. You don't have to have people running around like crazy, using up more energy than we can sustainably produce because we're burning up fossil fuels, doing useless things. like tax compliance and arguing against MMT. Totally useless endeavors. We should eliminate those bullshit jobs.
Like voting to condemn MMT. Waste of energy. Waste of energy.
This dangerous idea. This dangerous idea of soft currency. Oh my God, it's not hard enough. I can't run my computer on your fiat currency. Damn it! It just doesn't pipe well. The soft currency system allows a policymaker to think in real terms and get rid of the money out of their heads. It's a non-issue, but only if they understand that's possible. That's what they can do, because the money is the accounting records. It's the records of who owes whom what. It's the IOUs. Think of money that way. If you don't want to call it money, don't call it money. Call it something else. Just call it tax credits. I don't care what you call it, really. Then it's like tax credit macroeconomics is what MMT becomes. Once you understand that, you have a system. You don't have to talk about. You don't have to use the word money. You just call it tax credits or labor certificates, if you like.
God, that's always the best part when Warren's like, I don't want to use the word money, because I think that's how his mind thinks. Tax credits versus Sorry, go ahead, keep it going.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's where I was at. So it allows you to focus on what's the real purpose of this system of tax credits, which is to employ everyone. So why are you unemploying people? For God's sake, stop doing that. Just stop it. Understand the system. You can have full employment without massive, energy wastage and usage, because then you understand you don't have to have people going out there scrapping around doing crazy shit to try and find the money, because you don't need them to do that. They can be poets, they could be artists, they could be computer programmers, they can run permaculture gardens,
they can be ChatGPT users.
They can play chess, they can play sex chess or checks is what I call it, and all that sort of stuff that raises human consciousness. Well, I don't know if the chess does, but
chess doesn't raise human consciousness. Whoa, those are fighting words, man.
It's probably better than playing Half-Life and teleporting around like a dick.
You saw my conversation. What?
Yeah. I mentioned that, right? I think I've finished my rant on energy and currency, and I think people in our chat would understand. But I'm just saying this for anyone else tuning into the live stream who hasn't come across these ideas before. To wrap that little bit up before we go to Half-Life, it's like countless times I've come across good talks like the one Douglas just pulled up, where people talking about everything, in a sensible way in terms of real resources, and then at the final step when they talk about, but how are we going to pay for it? It's all just melts down into total enshittification, neoclassical, neoliberal thinking. Oh, the debt to our grandchildren. Yes, man, the debt is that we won't have a biosphere to inhabit if you don't make the investments now. So stop thinking about the currency as something finite and start thinking about how to employ people to fix this biosphere that humans have stuffed up. Come across those sort of talks all the time. It's always disappointing, but what can you do?
You know what you can do? You can point out that Eugenio is in agreement that Half-Life Alyx is a good game.
You can point out. You can make your MMT nerd comments on these channels and chats, and hope that someone maybe is listening. Or at the conference that I was helping out with recently, philanthropy conference, same thing, right? People wanting to do good, but they don't understand that they're trying to squeeze money out of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which they might do to the tune of a few million a year. How's that going to solve world hunger and poverty? Tell me that.
I think there was a guy that cracked the code on how to squeeze money out of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Really? Yeah. He died in prison.
So, is that a poll on that sort of stuff, apart from all the people poking me in the chat? Because I wanted you to show me why this Half-Life thing. What the hell is it?
Half-Life Alyx?
Is it actually any good?
Oh my god!
Is it good use of your time?
So good.
What is it?
Okay.
Is it better than chess? Is it better than chicks?
Yeah, it's better than both, man. Combined. Yeah.
How can anything be better than chicks?
Yeah. Well, you haven't played Half-Life Alyx, clearly. Yeah.
Do you have sex during Half-Life?
This is
you've got to go back a few months ago where I talked about chicks in this
Half-Life
YouTube channel.
Half-Life Alyx. If you ever make it stateside and we hang out, you're gonna play Half-Life Alyx. Listen, my wife's not a big gamer, but even she played it through. I mean, it is. Yeah, I don't know. It's exciting. I think it really showed what gaming could be. I wish the metaverse could have been more a vision like with what Valve did with Half-Life Alyx. Half-Life Alyx is just a VR game. I mean, it's just so. What's really wild, actually, it's the only time I've had this in VR experience. What's really just so cool with Half-Life Alyx, I played for 4 hours straight in one session one time, 4 hours straight. And this is how much your mind can get into this VR if the world is built right. So I use a teleportation thing. Yeah, Shot, welcome, dude. You got to get Half-Life Alyx. If you can get a VR headset, you got to get Half-Life Alyx. But anyway, I do get.
Does this have anything to do with MMT?
Yeah. I'll connect it to MMT. So
that's what I was.
No. It'll connect to MMT.
Okay. Go ahead.
So anyway, I get done after 4 hours, and this is just how much your mind can how effective VR can be with your mind. I couldn't figure out how to turn my body to go to the bathroom. It was the weirdest thing. I had to continue to think that I had to use the controller to move my body once I took the headset off. And yeah, it has no connection to MMT, but Half-Life Alyx is a worthwhile game to play. Shot, yeah, man, get it. Yeah, if you can tether, the Rift tethers to the PC, so yeah, do it, man. Absolutely do it. Highly recommended. The Rift is a VR headset. Yeah, Nora, it wasn't bad. I mean, it was just wild how just immersed you get in the world. And it's not even like a video game immersion. I mean, it was just literally it just triggers your brain to think that you actually existed in something else. I mean, it was as it turns out, that was right when I was really finally getting into kind of mindfulness meditation as well. So I was it was like the best experience I've had without having to have taken drugs to get it. I play it. It's
psilocybin and how was good.
Half-Life or the index right there is. What I've got, but
the nausea does get to me. Just playing conventional game on a flat screen, I get nauseous with all the 3D moving around.
If you play it and you use what's called teleportation, right, where it like snaps to the next position, you're not going to get motion sickness. I mean, I have vertigo and I get motion sickness. Like I can't ride roller coasters, and if I'm
in the ear,
and if I'm actually like if I play a game where you have to use what's called real locomotion, where you're actually you push the stick and you walk forward, can't do that. But these games, because that's just a known thing, right? If you move forward, but you don't move forward, right? Like if you visually move forward, but your body doesn't, right? Since that's a known thing, they built the games to jump, right? You point at the floor. You point at the floor, and it snaps. So. Yeah, and so it just snaps, so you don't deal with the trigger for the motion sickness. So yeah. Anyway, we've probably dropped to just 5 viewers who are geeking out about VR now.
Yeah.
Actually, we're not. So
that's what I was.
Yeah,
that's what I was sort of asking about. Yeah, because when you mentioned it on your feed, I was wondering, so what's so great about this teleportation? What on earth could this be? This is all.
It allows you. It allows you to not. It allows you to not get motion sickness. Yes, it allows you to not get motion sickness. Yeah.
Cool, man.
All right, Shot. Next week, man. I want to hear your first experience. That first scene, Eugenio, too, man. That first scene, Eugenio knows exactly what I'm talking about. It is so exciting. All righty. Back to MMT. One of the things I want to do, actually, there was a great question to get us back on track with MMT that I think.
Wait a minute. Firstly though, to tie it in, don't a lot of these games also have hard money and like?
That's MMT. Yeah. It does. It has credits in it. Yeah. It does, because the society's broken down, right? And it's broken down because they had a hard currency, and that's why they're in a post-apocalyptic society. Yeah, with the aliens that took over, ironically. Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah, it's true. Star Wars is a post-apocalyptic society that's collapsed because they use a credit system, like a hard currency. Yeah. All right. Back to MMT. Josh had a really good question in terms of the tax code. How big of the tax code would you have? I thought that was a good question. I also had some Twitter questions come in, and I want to answer these. And then I also had one from last week that I didn't get to, but I had some comment questions, some Twitter questions. Anyway,
what was the first one that you said? It sounded like a quick. What was the tax question?
How large of a tax code should we have? What would the tax code? What would the ideal tax code look like?
It doesn't matter. You can have whatever tax you like as long as you issue enough currency for people to pay the tax. So it's really about how many people do you want to employ in the public sector, and how do you want to accommodate the rest of the current economy's savings desires for people who have a need to pay taxes and fees and fines and levies and all that sort of thing. So I think the correct question about tax is the structure of it, the brackets, and what economic activity do you want to tax? Okay, because whatever you tax, it better be legitimate. You don't want to tax certain things that are things you don't want to happen. If you have something you don't want to happen, you fine it out of existence, right? You don't tax it. So this is why all this carbon taxing, all this nonsense, right? People need to use carbon, so you got to ration it. You got to use carbon credits or something like that. But for tax is something like, I think the Georgians, the land value tax and all that sort of thing is pretty good. And people need to use energy. So in some sense, you need to tax some uses of energy to limit them in some areas. So the thing about taxes to me is, from MT perspective, it's not how much you tax. It's what you tax, where you tax, do it targeted for public purpose. Probably don't tax any wages, because why? Why do you give people income and then tax it away?
Because we want to dissuade people from work. We want to dissuade people from working.
You just want to dissuade people from working. Just work a few. Okay, you do want to dissuade people from working unnecessarily. That's for sure. So you pay them enough so they only have to work 3 hours a day. Would be the story there. But you don't tax them for it. You don't have to tax them. They're going to want to work more than 3 hours a day. That's not a good idea. Unless okay. So I'll agree with Bill Mitchell that we wake up every day to severe labor shortages. Right? There's always more things good that can be done that aren't being done and never going to be done because we don't have enough people. But we're talking about necessities here. What's actually necessity for a decent society, decent standards of living? Get that done, and it's a tax-driven currency, so you can always issue enough to pay the taxes. The question is just, where, how, what you want to target the tax to do. What purpose do you want to accomplish? Stop thinking of this in terms of just the Wild West sort of free market, because you're a currency monopolist. So you have the responsibility to use that monopoly power and not just let everything just go haywire and it's all just market, everything market. That would just be irresponsible. So I think what do you think, Douglas, about the progressive tax rates? So I don't know. So if you want to tax income, or let's say maybe you want to tax some consumption, maybe you want to do it in a progressive way, right? So stuff that lower wage people need to get, the necessities. You don't want to put too much tax on that. And the luxuries, people in their yacht cutting down teak wood forests. You want to tax that a little bit to de-incentivize that kind of consumption.
Yep.
And if you had an income tax or whatever, or wealth tax, it'd just be a higher tax rate for the more wealthy, because they're currency hoarders. So we need, anyone saving the currency is causing the government to run a higher deficit. I mean, I don't have a problem with that actually, but still, I guess for optics and politics, you want to have a progressive tax rate. The structure of the tax is important, not how much you tax, because you can always issue enough currency, and you should. That's what you should do. You should issue enough currency for people to pay their taxes, and have some savings.
I would focus taxes on consumption in the sense that particularly because I really don't like the idea of taxing rich people. I mean, if
use of land.
Yeah, and that would be absolutely the first one. I mean, that would be absolutely the first one. You don't tax anything less than like a half an acre or something like that, right? But once you start getting land usage up there, like you need right. I mean, it needs to be something where it's like, I'm fine if someone wants to go buy up half of Wyoming, but they better put it to productive use, right? And so if it's going to be for productive, you can create some sort of slide and scale or something like that where. You measure this stuff in terms of what's the risk reward for if you just want to consume to have it, right? Fine, that's your prerogative, but it's going to cost you more of your wealth than otherwise. And so it's the usage shot. I mean, I agree. It's absolutely usage, and if you want. We live in a free country, so to say. So if you want to buy up a bunch of real estate on Lake Michigan, that's your prerogative. But there should be a tax on. Yeah, I mean to kind of not dissuade that, but just the more you get, the more. Because
I think government has to work in public purpose to ensure that there's plentiful family housing.
Yeah,
so that no one is scrounging around trying to find a place to live. That's number one importance. So you have to tax land away for that reason, to bring it into the public sector.
Yep.
And whether it's public housing or not, or whether it's still private housing, the government has a responsibility to people, to the public, to ensure that there's adequate and good, decent housing for everyone. After that, then you're talking about limiting additional land use for ecological reasons and for just the reasons exactly as you were saying. I agree with you. Someone wants to use land productively, and it's not residential housing land. Then there are we know that the markets can to a certain extent cope with that kind of an allowance for land use.
Charles, if they're doing it to make a private conservation, then they get a tax write-off for it being a private conservation. I mean, it would be that it'd be that simple. It would be that simple if they're not going to develop the land and they're going to let it be so the whatever prairie animals run around on it can continue to run around on it.
But just owning the land for the sake of owning the land as an investment, as a speculative vehicle, I think should just be outlawed. I mean, there's no reason why anyone needs to own the Earth. It's our planet. It's everyone's planet. It doesn't belong to Bill Gates or BlackRock or whoever.
Whoever
owns
half of Wyoming.
And the fact that they think it belongs to them because they have a lease or a license from the government saying that they own this land, I reckon it's just an abomination. It's just totally just anti-humanistic, naturalistic kind of thinking to think that you own a piece of the earth.
It sounds like the
you lease it, you rent it off the state or whatever for your private purposes, and you've got to prove you've got a legitimate purpose to use that land for. So
it sounds like the start of Super Troopers. You can't own the earth, man.
Something like that, whatever it is. Yeah. I mean, someone can think they own the earth, but it's just exercising power. It's just exercising, unbridled power. And I think all us little busy worker ants and bees ought to just try and sting those people to death. They have no business being on a planet in a society of social creatures, thinking they can own the earth or own a piece of the earth. No, I've got to get rid of that sort of thinking. That's Darwinistic kind of thinking, just greed, selfishness, individualism. So
I'll tell you what, though, it does feel good. I stand in front of our back slider, looking out to the my plot of land, my arms crossed.
Yeah.
Thinking, God, this is my kingdom right here. All
little mini kingdom. Yeah.
Quarter acre.
Okay,
of land.
So if everyone on Earth can have that, I'm okay about it. Everyone on Earth can have that if they work as hard as Douglas. And that would be fine. But
good question, Josh. Good question. Here's a question that I think it was Danger Zone had in the chat at the end of last week, and this is a really good question. Let me get it right.
Okay.
The question was, Danger Zone asked this. He drops into the chat from time to time, so if you're watching this down the line, good question. When you're explaining MMT to a newbie, what order do you put things in? So how would you talk MMT to someone that's never heard it? Maybe a better way to put it. Maybe a better way to put that too is someone says something that's just factually incorrect. Well, the government can't pay for that. Something like that. How do you get them to understand, build the foundation for them to understand the MMT story?
Yeah. Well, firstly, what I would say, I've got some teaching credentials, and I sort of think I know a little bit about pedagogy and education. First thing is to understand the person you're talking to, understand your audience, because you can approach MMT from many different perspectives, and the very best way I think is, or you could say there's like two extremes. One is get into their head, understand where they're coming from, what they think already, and whether they're going to be just outright aggressive and just not want to listen to you, or whether they're sincerely wanting to learn. That's the first thing. Understand the person you're talking to first. Get to know them. Secondly, is you could use the other thing of like cognitive dissonance, like use a few Moslerisms to like shock them into, oh damn, the tax man is the guy at the door with a machine gun and won't let you out of the room unless you give him some of your Mosler's business cards, or the Pompeii story or anything like that. But that all depends whether it works as cognitive dissonance to give them a bit of a shake up, or whether you take a more softly approach. Really depends on the person you're talking to. And varies person to person. People don't get to MMT in the same ways. So I don't know. Maybe me, Douglas. I think we've talked about this in the past, but maybe you want to talk about what your favorite approach to.
As someone who has no pedagogical experience and can't talk from
go for it.
I think I saw it up in the chat too. I start with sectoral balances first. It is just the way to begin the discussion, assuming they have some sort of understanding of just some really basic finance stuff. I think if they can understand
I start with government being the currency monopoly, and you ask, what does your nation want, and how do you get it? Okay, so what does the government do when it finds it needs to provision itself, with an army, with a legal system, with basic social services? Okay, it has to employ people. What is it going to employ people with, right? It doesn't have any gold or anything to begin with. It just has a willingness, a collective body of people who you've elected, who have, society is given the responsibility to make a few executive decisions here and there and to draft law. Don't say all that. That's all good. just start with the Moses story of like, it starts with government wanting to provision society. That's the first thing. Secondly, okay, so they impose tax liabilities and fees and fines and levies payable only in the state's currency. Thirdly, they've now created unemployment because people now need the state's currency, because they're employing an army. Or supposedly they've got an army in the first place. Actually, that's a bit of a dodgy issue there. You've got to talk about that. That might be one that people come up with you. Like, how do they get the army in the first place? Okay, let's maybe assume it's granted. Are we talking barter story here? I don't know. Anyway, they've unemployed people by issuing tax liabilities payable only in the state's currency. So now it can hire all of the people that they unemployed, all of them. Right? Why leave anyone unemployed? And anyone who wants to work more to earn more currency than the amount that they need to pay in taxes can work more, and that becomes net savings of the private sector. People who aren't employed by the state can sell goods and services to people who are employed by the state, your army, your teachers, your public health workers or whoever. They can sell goods to those people to get the currency to pay their taxes, and they can sell more goods than they need in order to pay taxes, in which case they also have savings. And then you've got the rest of the story is the current situation is, what if the government hasn't done that? Well, then they've created more unemployment than was needed, more people needing to get the currency than the state's been willing to hire, or the banks acting as agents of the state have been willing to lend. And so you've got a needless unemployment, and over the long run, that creates damaged people. Massive psychological, sociological costs, massive costs associated with unemployment. Why did you do that? Well, okay, let's forgive you in the past because you didn't understand the monetary system. So, but what are you going to do about it? Well, you can't just lower taxes because private companies and firms do not want to hire the long-term unemployed. They're damaged goods. And so, not in all cases, but generally speaking, that's the sentiment in the employers' minds. They prefer to employ already employed workers. Okay, that creates your inflationary price wage type pressures. So the government has to employ everyone that they unemployed by design, and that's the job guarantee or expanded public sector work. If the people are skilled, you pay them a skilled wage. You don't have to pay them a job guarantee wage. You don't have to give them any pittance of a UBI, which is highly regressive and disgusting neoliberal policy. You can employ them in the public sector if they're skilled, or give them the claim on the state of a job guarantee for any local community work they care to engage in. Could be anything from community work. That solves the unemployment problem or fixes the policy mistake, and that's basically the MMT story. I forgot this section. You have to mention at some point the taxes do get paid, and then what currency has been issued that hasn't been used to pay taxes. Taxes becomes net private sector savings. That's the money story. That's what I would do to anyone who's like thinking, oh, what is MMT? Because, in their head, modern monetary theory, you start with the money story, I think. But like I said, like Douglas said, it's different for different people. They may have a different angle. They may have a different reason for wanting to understand MMT. Like they may be environmentalists and want to know how we're going to pay for the Green New Deal and so forth. Or they may be industrialists and others who just want to understand the markets and that sort of thing. So you can always, but it's always good to start with the concept that the government has a monopoly on the currency, a simple public monopoly. If you don't understand it, you're going to get a whole lot of things wrong, and it's going to be a terrible state of affairs if you get things wrong, if you misuse your monopoly power. Anyway, Douglas, what would be your default or go-to?
Yeah, I mean, it still goes back to the I like to start with the sectoral balance thing. I think it really helps. Yeah. Okay, I mean, most people I'm going to talk to about MMT are gonna. I mean, it's going to be around trading, investing, right? I mean, it's going to be in that framework.
With the sectoral balances, you have to handle the bank credit, endogenous money thing.
No, exactly, right. I mean, so I mean, and that's it, right? I mean, at some point, there's going to be like there's going to be kind of the. There's going to no. I mean, there's going to be like the mental. I'm just not. I mean, I there's someone in my life who's exactly like this, right? I mean, he's an accountant by training. He's runs I mean, used to run a massive, I forget the AUM, but I mean, his fund was huge, hundreds of millions of dollars. He is what his assets under management was. And, you know, him and I sat down and I explained to him, he was curious about the models and stuff. So I was really trying to explain to him all of it. And we were going over government spending, and I'm just like, you know, look, when the government spends, that's private sector savings, right? And it can only, whoever gets it can only save it or spend it themselves. That's just how it is, right? And so that clicks. Yeah, he gets that. I'm like, at some point, the residual of that is either higher profits for the company, or that's just investment because people now have money to buy the stock. So I mean, that's, you know, stocks go higher because of that. That's the, you know, that's the you know, the elevator pitch for kind of my underlying, you know, macro framework and how, you know, we build all this stuff. And so that clicked. But it's still yucky in their mind to say government spending, right? It's just what it's going to be.
It's a psychological hurdle. Yeah.
And then the first question people have, well, what about the 90s, right? And that is, and this is, it's difficult to understand, right? I mean, but that's when you can you know, begin to explain the endogenous cycle. Well, yeah, if, you know, if people you know, to essentially grow and continue to create money, that now you're reliant on the banking cycle to do that, right? You're going to go into, you know, the private sector is going to run a deficit of its own.
Deficit, yeah.
And that
someone's spending more than their income.
Yeah, exactly, right? So that's going to be a deficit, and that, and then all of a sudden, and that's when you can get into the Minsky dynamics, right, or the debt deflation dynamics. And
as an introduction, maybe. If they understand.
Yeah, once they get but see, I mean, that's it. Once they get, so I mean, when I explain it,
they'd have to have some background knowledge to understand the Minsky dynamic.
When I explain MMT, that what I'm trying to convince people of is that at least sectoral balances is the sectoral balance view is at least the way to understand the macroeconomy, right? I mean, it's that is the right way to look at it. And so the big question is, why was 2000 and 2008 such a disaster, right? I mean, really the best way, you know, if MMT can solve anything for a lot of people, it would be that to never have to live through a 2000 or 2008 again, right? And so in order to understand that, you have to understand the Minsky debt dynamics deflation, debt deflation dynamics, right? And that's, you know, that's the point. I'm not trying to say the business cycle goes away if you just government spend enough, but I mean, the math just works out that way, right? I mean, if there's a contraction in the credit cycle,
be careful about that. You got to be careful about with the, you know, people like Charles and our chats and all that. Because it's not about whether the government spends enough. It's about whether the government issues enough currency to meet the need to pay taxes and the residual desires to save. In that sense, if the private sector is willing to spend more than its income, it can run a deficit, the government can run a surplus. So the idea is the government deficit floats. You don't even have to think about the government deficit. It just is not an economic or financial issue.
Maybe I'm saying I'm not getting the point that you're trying to counter, I guess.
I'm not really countering. I'm just saying when you got to be careful when you say it that way.
Say like what? I'm sorry.
Worrying about government spending. I was just focusing on the very last thing you said about government spending. You know, because you mentioned people get a bit squeamish about that, right? So the way to get rid of that is to well, you know.
Oh well, no. I mean, no. The point I'm trying to, I mean, the point that I would eventually get them to understand is that government spending isn't what they think it is, right? Government spending isn't spending money they don't have, right? I mean, it's spending money that they have an infinite amount of, right?
Right.
Right.
Well, that's the currency monopoly.
Yeah. So I know. But I guess what I'm saying is these are, when you say currency monopoly, right? The hard money crowd, they're just going to shut down. They're not gonna. It's not going to be anything that they're going to want to even continue to compute from there, right? So my point is, I'm not going to even mention that until they have the framework in place first. The structural framework in place to understand how the economy functions, like how the economy we have actually functions. And then I can point out, like, yeah, it's because they're the monopoly issuer of it. And then, once they understand the framework, and they're like, okay, yeah. If the government isn't spending, as they understand, if the government isn't spending, then the economy is reliant now on what I would just call the endogenous cycle, right? So that is how the economy is going to function, and that is a highly volatile, you don't want it going up because it comes down even harder cycle, and that's why 2000 and 2008 occurred, right? And we can offset that, right? Now we want the business cycle, right? I mean, that the business cycle isn't a bad thing inherently. It's a bad thing when it's the only game in town,
right?
And we offset that, and then it does actually open the door, because again, usually I'm pitching this to people who are trying to understand economics, because it then does open the door for some of the stuff that Steve Keen specifically has spelled out, the math behind the the debt deflation cycle, right? Where you get in this Ponzi financing sort of situation where you need to continue to accelerate, right? Otherwise, if even the acceleration, even if you continue to get growth in the sense of expanding private debt, if it's not accelerating, you can actually see in terms of like a measurement of GDP growth, you actually end up contracting, right? So then once they can kind of understand that, it's like, so you can offset that contraction by simply government spending, right? So yeah, so that's how I've pressed it, and the thing is, if you don't even mention MMT, because for better or worse, MMT is fully it's connected to AOC, it's connected to those who I don't even think have ever used the three letters MMT next to each other, like Elizabeth Warren and some of the other kind of anti-capitalist
that old Marxist Warren Mosley.
Yeah, like some of the anti-capitalist politicians. And so my point is, I just simply define MMT the way that Mosler, I try to define the MMT as a framework for analysis first and foremost. And when I say framework, I'm really thinking sectoral balances. So that's how I go about it. I mean, I'm not out to convince anyone of MMT per se. It's not what I'm after day in and day out. But when the conversations come up, it just points out. I'll just point out kind of from that sectoral balance view.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, there's very good reasons to try and educate people about MMT. But like I said, I think it goes back to what I said earlier. In a way, they've got to want to learn, and so if they have resistances, then I probably would go in other directions and talk about some of the the mechanics that you mentioned. But that you're talking there to someone who's like already got an understanding of a little bit of how markets work, how accounting works, and that sort of thing. Whereas, like I said, I mean, you've got to use a narrative that works for the person you're talking to. And I think for a lot of people, for a lot of investors, traders, finance bros, people in our chat, maybe more people who tune into MMT trader channels rather than real progressives, I agree, they may not want to know the government is the currency monopoly, but that's vital. That's the most important thing, I think. And even though they don't want to know, you got to point it out to them at some point. You got to point out, because it just covers it covers everything. It's the base case. It's where you start off the analysis. So all the sectoral balances frameworks and all that, how does that even exist? It only exists because people are keeping accounting records. And what is that? That's a function of government. And what about the banks? They say, oh yeah, but the banks do all this. Yeah, but the banks are all chartered and licensed by the state. Everywhere I've seen. I mean, in medieval Europe, there was the Banca de Giro. As far as I can recall, in all human history, it's the only bank that hasn't been really, set up by a government, so to speak. So I think it'd be good practice if you come across people who want to learn about MMT, and you read them as more sort of a progressive type, just a normal person, lefty, doesn't know much about doesn't even know what Minsky, or maybe even doesn't know what Keynes is, doesn't know much about markets.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to use the word Minsky. I mean, I'm not going to roll out that.
Start with the power relations and the government as a currency monopoly, and they can really quickly understand where the money comes from in that sense.
Danger zone, by the way. Welcome, man. We're actually discussing your question right now. And
your question, man.
I think this was your question that came up. I guess. It was.
Sectoral balances just, to me, right, have a little bit of. There's not much of a tether there. It's like you get the Bob Murphy types nerding in saying, "Yeah, but that's just accounting." It's like, yeah. Like you pointed out a few weeks ago. So when you start with the sectoral balances, someone spending more than their income, that has to be accompanied by an understanding of the legal reality that you just can't counterfeit the money. It doesn't get emitted from rich people.
Yeah, but so okay, and I guess that's my point, though. I think so many people. I mean, listen, I've only had this conversation with a couple dozen people. It's not like a conversation. Not even a couple dozen people. Maybe a dozen people. It's not a conversation I'm having that often. But you know what? No, actually, to a certain extent, even with the progressives, with the progressives, a lot of them, I want to shake out their kind of hate the billionaire thing, right? And I think sectoral balances helps describe that as well. It helps at least get a framework for that as well, but. I don't know. And maybe it's just because the sectoral balance story clicked it. That's what clicked. That's how it got me to understand it. So maybe I can only see it through the lens that I experience. But I mean, listen, the person I have in mind would not say they're an MMT or would never even want to come close to MMT in terms of thinking policy wise. But the minute I explain the MMT story from a sectoral balance standpoint, they're in agreement with the MMT, the MMT premise, right? And they begin to view the world and they understand the economic world through the lens of a soft currency. So, and to me, but wow, that actually turned out to be a very good. It turned out to be a good question.
Good question. It's always a good question because there's all sorts of war stories about people, first mentioning MMT to their uncle or aunt or family members, and it's sort of like going off the rails a little bit. But I reckon.
By the way, Charles, I did name myself the MMT macro trader. So even though I try and shy away from the three letters MMT, I still take it as a badge of honor, despite the bastardization that it went through because of a handful of people on Twitter and stuff. Yeah. But who all told you to be in cash? Who all told you to be in cash at the end of December and it was too early to buy stocks? Yada yada yada. And you know what they are? They're broke. That's what they are right now. They're broke by their own choice. They're not broke because the government put them into unemployment. They're broke because they decided to stay in cash.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, if I was talking to you, Douglas, I might take your approach because you are you, and anyone in investing or finance, I might also want to
start that path. God, I'm trying to think.
Start down that path, but I can't leave a conversation without getting it across that it's money system is a legal reality, not a thing that comes out of nature or barter, and so it's the barter myth that I think is even today more prevalent, and the gold sort of thinking myth that really needs to be dislodged, because even though people say, yeah, well, sectoral balances on the accounting, blah blah blah, it's like in the head, if they leave the conversation and they honestly wanted to learn about MMT, if they leave the conversation with me, still with the barter myth and not understanding the currency as a monopoly tax credit, I failed. I think I failed. I'd be pretty sad about it. So, but anyway, people do that all to me. They come and I want to learn about MMT, And I do mention all these things: sectoral balances and the money story and the bond story. That bonds are issued on a floating exchange rate to set the interest rate, not to get money for the government. And people will like nod their heads, right, and nodding along, and then like a week or so later, they've forgotten. It just didn't sink in. So I've had that happen. I mean, not often, maybe one or two people. Most people are able to get it, right, if you keep it simple enough. And simple, but no simpler than necessary. So, yeah.
That was a really good question. It's brought up. Oh, sorry, yeah. I thought you were done.
It's always good if they know Keynes or Minsky.
Yeah. But even if they don't, the sectoral balance can get them.
Even if they don't,
started with understanding the dynamics that play.
Well, let's say sectoral balance, all the money story. I know Warren favors Pompeii in the money story. He thinks that's the best way.
Yeah.
Or the tax man, how the tax system works. I got these worthless cards that are trash. I can turn them into money. It is extremely powerful. It's a really powerful way to go about teaching MMT. If someone wants to come in from that angle, from the public purpose, government side of the angle. But if they're coming from market, investing, trading, and they understand accounting and that, then sectoral balances are also very, very powerful.
I was ready to leave this subject. It didn't.
Oh, you were going to leave it?
No.
Good. It depends on who you talk to.
But okay.
Go on then. Go ahead.
Here's why the sectoral balance is the way to go, and you have to start with an approach that is an almost econometric approach. This is why. Because then you get all those goofballs that like think that you got to tax people. And that capitalism is inherently evil, and that small c. Yeah, you're like, yeah, dog. Capitalism is inherently evil. Large small c capitalism. And then they can't get off kind of the hard left soapbox, right? And the MMT is just then more of a social. Like I'm not. It's late here, guys. I'm getting tired. The words aren't coming to me as fast as they would have been 12 hours ago. But then it's used.
No, I'm interested in you.
Then it's used in more of a kind of a hard left activist sense. I just
I've never really come across that type of person.
The tax the rich people, they're all over the place. Like there's the Murphy guy or whatever his name was. Maybe I've got his name wrong. He was on Ty Keen's podcast a few weeks ago.
Okay, but I know what you're talking about. But I think that the money story does that a lot better. So just to explain, if you can quickly. I know it's late, but how does the sectoral balances work as a better sort of first avenue of attack?
Okay. Perfect. This is it. Everyone hates deficit spending.
Yes.
Everyone hates deficit spending until you understand MMT. And the way to get people to understand that deficit spending is a good thing is sectoral balances. Right, because deficit spending is someone else's surplus. Oh my God, that's my surplus. Wait a second, you're trying to tell me that the private sector surplus, because the public sector deficit is really just means that there's some sort of distribution of that income across society. And oh my God, there's hold on, and that there's rules set up to determine how that gets distributed, and those rules are legal rules. Yeah, bam. Okay, we're good. We're done. We can move along here. And then you know what? What we understand is that it is a political decision. And here's the other thing too, that we want this thing that sits alongside of this MMT story called the business cycle, right? Which is capitalism, right? We want people to be able to or I guess you would call it not capitalism, but you would call it
enterprise.
Private enterprise. Where we want this to set on top, and that creates the business cycle. And you know what? The business cycle is going to misalign resources from time to time, right? That's fine. That's going to happen, right? It's going to turn out that you built the iPhone and you built the Zune, or you built this VR headset and you did a JPEG monkey, right? Yeah, there's going to be winners and losers, and then that business cycle is going to realign, and then we're all happy there. There will be winners and losers, but you know what? We won't collectively be a loser like 2000 and 2008. The reason that 2000 and 2008 happened can be explained by looking at one sectoral balance chart. and then you're good to go. I mean, the only people like when I share this chart on Twitter, let me pull it up, right? The only people who don't get it, I'm going to transition over here, right? The only people who look at this and don't get it are the fucking idiots, right? I mean, you have to be an idiot to look at this and say, "Oh my God, it goes below the line and we get a recession, and it stays above the line and we're not in a recession." I should have bleeped that out. Sorry, YouTube advertiser friendly, right? But like, oh man, there's almost a correlation here. So anyway, that's my point. It's so easy to visualize that. And then from there, you can have whatever discussion you want, right? The guy that says we got to tax everything. No, we don't. That's not. And in fact, that's just bad. That's a bad. Here's the thing, too, is this like if we got around and we're like, no, man, we got to get to Mars. Like, this is just something that Americans have to do. This is just, Ty, I'm on fire, right? This is just something Americans have to do because it is our pride is on the line here. We got to be the first one to get on Mars. The only thing that's stopping us is the real constraint of the scientists and, the astronauts to figure out how we're actually going to do it, and the engineers to figure out how we're going to do it. And that's just what we do. We don't focus on anything else but that. Like, hey, we have 50% of society that's just underserved by the economy. Let's solve that problem. I don't know. I'm going to digress.
That's a good. I think. I'm with you on that approach.
And it starts with the sectoral balance view. In my opinion. Anyway. All right. I'm done. Bijou.
Yeah, but the sectoral balances are accounting residual that come after the government sets things up. So in terms of the sequence, Warren is really on about this quite a lot. In terms of the sequence, I think that is far more important to understand ultimately, because it's like, where does the sectoral balances come from? So if people have the background knowledge to some of it, then I think your approach is gonna work real powerful, and quite quickly once they realize what the government deficit actually really is. However, maybe I haven't done it that way enough to really figure out whether that is the most effective method. It's you never know until you try, I guess. Maybe next time I'll try starting that way. But the other thing is that if you have the sectoral balance story sorted out really in your head, it's going to be one of the most effective ways to teach anyone, because you're the one teaching it. So although I mentioned like it's important to understand your audience or your student or the person who wants to learn, a teacher will always fall back to what they can teach the best way that they can teach for the given student. So it's both people are a party to this sort of discourse. So I think I'll try sectoral balances on someone next. That'll be my next guinea pig, I guess. But yeah, but I just get the money story one just comes out more fluidly for me, whereas it seems like sectoral balances works for you. But either way, I think both have to be understood. Otherwise, you haven't quite introduced them fully to MMT.
Yeah, I mean, listen. Once if it clicks, then absolutely.
It's like the sequence. The sequence is so important. The sequence is why the deficit spending is accounting residual. It shouldn't be anything you worry about.
Yeah, but no one's going to care about the sequence. They do. They just want to know that 2008's not going to happen again. I don't know. Maybe they do care about the sequence. Yeah, I don't know.
That's a good question. Maybe I'm way off in this MMT nerd space, and I don't really have contact with the real world enough to know. But yeah, you might be right about that. But Ben, I'm just so much of a Warren fan. I just love the way Warren puts everything that I'm like. That when he says understanding the sequence is really important, and I'm listening to all his podcasts and webinars, my head is just nodding like crazy. I'm just this is awesome, and it's so juicy for me to listen to. But that's probably, I admit, okay, it's probably just way my bias and the way my brain works. It's just so in sync with Warren, and Bill Mitchell too. I mean, I love Bill, and yeah, but I'm not so much for Stephanie Kelton, guys. I think she gets a lot of the language framing wrong. But damn, I'm just so loving what she's been able to accomplish and what she does, and so I'm not. Yeah, I don't mind if in the end of the day someone gets a better understanding of how the macroeconomy works and how the monetary system works, then I guess I'd be happy. It's just if someone sincerely wants to learn, they've got to sit down with you for an hour or two. That's what I did with some friends of mine, and they sat down with me for about an hour, and I found that was just adequate enough time, and like 20-minute, 5-minute elevator pitch is really freaking hard. And yeah, if you had the sectoral balances visual right in your pocket, you pull it out.
Oh yeah, we all do it. I mean, I save it as my save it as my background screen on my phone. So I just
yeah. I'm thinking about sort of out at the cafe or somewhere where you don't have your electronic devices, but I guess you got your cell phone. Yeah. Pull it out. Yeah. That should work.
But everyone knows in the 1990s we were running a government surplus, right? So like it's not too hard to explain. I mean, anyone that's going to care about MMT as it relates to kind of the mainstream economy would understand that. I guess I don't think I have to.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. It depends. It really does depend on their angle of attack. If they want to understand ecology, a green transition, if they're on that sort of side of things, and they really have no head for money in accounting, then I think the power story, the money story, is the way to go, because they're just sectoral balance. What the hell is that?
Well, I don't tell them. I'm not like, hey, sectoral balance. Like, no, I mean, it's when the government spends, that's your
sectoral even.
Yeah, I'm not gonna use the word sectoral balance. I'm simply gonna say that the government doesn't need to borrow to spend, right? And that's just the accounting of it, and that yeah.
Anyway, we're gonna have an MMT teaching challenge here. Me versus Douglas. See which the sequence works, or is it sectoral balance? Does it work? Definitely, that's in the future.
You know what though? Okay. Here's the one thing I'm going to succeed. Maybe it is just because, and this comes out on Twitter. The more comfortable I get on Twitter, the worse it gets too. Because I'm even reading some of these people's responses right now, and I'm it's ticking me off because they're so fucking. They're so stupid.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It's like they just hit their head against the wall 3 times and then decide like to respond to me.
But also hasn't been too much on Twitter. It sort of wrecked your brain a little bit.
Yeah, it has wrecked my brain.
How do you cope with all the nonsense? Seriously, actually, I do worry about you sometimes. Like I have to stay off Twitter, man. Just
trust me. Yeah.
Mind-melting stupidity.
I know where the limit is. I mean, there's some things I just finally give up on. And it doesn't matter. If I can get a good dig in, then I'm going to do it. But I don't need to win the debate. Right. I don't need to win the debate.
I'm always in your corner, so I'll give you a like.
Yeah. But if I can get it good, I was right, you were wrong, and I think that's part of the sectoral balance thing too. It's like a magic trick almost. I mean, that's almost what it's like. Like it's like, hey, I figured this out. You want to know how? Oh yeah, because you got it backwards. There were 2 people there were 2 people in the box, not one. So, let's see. I'm also seeing some stuff up here too about figureheads for MMT, and again I think some of it is I don't know I really like Warren. I think Warren puts things the right way all the time, and I think he's able to bring Charles. Good night, man. Thanks for dropping in. Thanks for staying here for so long.
Charles, thanks, man.
We do appreciate you, man. You really are. You really are one of the best here, and I always appreciate the different views. I don't know where I was going. How about this? We had another question. We had a couple other things too that came up.
Yep.
maybe we can change gears. Maybe we don't have to. I don't know if we're having fun doing this.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't see a lot of question marks in the chat.
No. It wasn't in chat. It wasn't in chat. It was outside of chat.
Not in chat.
I don't know.
Man.
Did you have any other points on?
Yeah. Just I think I mentioned last week, or somewhere I mentioned that Australia might. Yeah. You asked me. You put me on the spot last week about Australia and New Zealand having these maybe entering technical recession. The interest rate effect not working there because the government debt to GDP ratio is not high enough. It's just on the verge of it being high, but it's not quite. And so, some of the debt effects, rather than interest income effects, are maybe just sort of balancing out and not doing so well for Australia and New Zealand. But it's interesting because as the data comes out, the supply effects, the supply cost push effects of the inflation seem still be going down, but the rates are still around about 5%, and so the broad rate of change, the price level is still around 5%. So even though like the supply costs are coming down, the inflation, the general price level is it's still pretty it's not moving so much. And I think just speculation, I think what we're seeing is that the components of inflation coming from the supply bottlenecks and supply shortages and labor tightening and people dying are still there, but they're becoming less important as a component of inflation. And so we're starting to see now that I think a lot of the price indices are coming almost into a line with the interest rate. So that's an interesting one to keep track of, I reckon. I don't know if we can do a little bit of simple data analysis about it, but it's just something to think about, because the problem with the MMT story of interest rates being almost one-to-one directly inflationary is that they weren't the only component causing the COVID era inflation. And so as the supply cost push effects drop off, I think we may have a chance to see, it's a sort of a natural experiment to see how the interest rate does almost one-to-one determine the price level. And it's something I think someone should keep track of, look into. What else? There's a guy on Andy Lucas, I think, asked us some good questions that came from a Substack by this channel called Concodonomics, a sort of ninja icon or something.
Yeah.
We have time to discuss that.
He reached out to you. I got to read it. I just have not had time.
Yeah, you got to read it. It's quite a long one. Just to prep that maybe for next week or whatever.
Yeah.
A lot of discussion of the LIBOR and the change from the LIBOR to now the other interest rate set of tools of SOFR and a lot of the stuff. And my God, it's all just nonsense.
They are.
What can I say? LIBOR started with this dude in London, or whatever, the bankers in London, sitting around a table telling the USA what interest rate it should set interbank interest rates and so forth. But they'll just the whole industry of all these instruments, all these securities and all that, it could just all go away and people could be doing something a lot better with their lives, like, curing cancer or planting permaculture gardens or whatever. So it was an interesting read because it goes into some of the weeds on all those recent policy changes. But I think still the problem with a lot of that commentary is that they still have this, I think it's hard to pick out in that particular piece, but I still think in the back of people's minds is thinking that the government is borrowing.
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, the entire, it's crazy to see the Fed build this infrastructure up around the eurodollar system to get better control.
So it's a bit like
to get better control.
It's a bit like the ecologist mentioned earlier. Yeah.
It's just crazy. Yeah, I gotta do some more reading up on it. So I'm a little actually. Myself and the Applied MMT podcast, Ryan and I had a brief back and forth, and actually I might have to bring Ryan on so we can have a discussion. He seems to be pretty up on banking with regards to the eurodollar system, and I've always been under the just kind of the theoretical framework idea. I say it to qualify the word impression, but I've always been under the impression that the eurodollar system is much more akin to a fixed exchange rate system, right? Because they are reserve constraint when you lend in eurodollars. So the dynamics are much more akin to the dynamics that you would see in a debt deflation style system, right? And so my tell for where we're at in that cycle, and if it's going to start to cause issues domestically in the U.S., right, is really if the dollar starts to take off. Because if the dollar starts to take off, that means that you're actually seeing a credit contraction because people are now needing dollars. The dollar shortage occurs when there's a credit contraction. And a lot of the boogeymen that are in that space, they'll say something to the extent of, oh look, it's just it's money magic. They just create this money out of thin air. And of course the MMT story is that's how money is always created. It's just one big accounting thing. But from like an investment standpoint, look, on the way up, right? I mean, if you're trying to invest on the way up, you want to be long while the credit expansion is happening. Now, in the U.S., when domestically the credit expansion occurs, it's not a fixed reserve, or it's not a reserve constraint situation. It's an income situation, and so as long as the income channel continues to flow, you can continue to get this sustained growth from both channels.
Right.
But in the rest of the world, you don't have that. They need to they need to extract the dollars out of the U.S. by exporting into the U.S. And then hopefully exchanging those over the treasuries, because treasuries are the most demanded collateral in this eurodollar system. So that's kind of my take. It is. I guess the way I would put it is when stuff gets really bad, the eurodollar system is going to exacerbate the problems. When stuff is fine, it's going to help propel the good, if you will. It's going to help propel the upward cycle, right? So it really is an amplifier to the underlying business cycle, because what happens is when the U.S. let's just say we get someone decides we're gonna balance the budget, right? We repeat the 1990s all over again. Now this time it would happen much quicker. We wouldn't get 4 or 5 years of growth. We might get 6 months of growth before we finally see contraction on the I'll call it the endogenous or bank side. So you get this growth that's going to happen, and then eventually the contraction would happen. And when that contraction happens, it's going to be exacerbated because the dollars aren't being printed, right? They're being taxed away at a faster and faster rate, right? Because now not only are you not getting the support from the new dollars being created, the euro dollars being created from the banking system, that side is also contracting. So you're getting both the private sector saving to contract because it's being removed from the deletion on the public side of the balance sheet, and you're getting a contraction of the endogenous cycle. So you put those two together and you get 2008. So that's how that would play out. But in the meantime, that's we're not going to see that. And the first hint of that is if the dollar really starts to take over. Ty, you're saying good night, goodbye. I'm sorry. We are actually at the very end of this. We are going to get into how tight Jay Powell needs it. So that is what we will get into. But you'll be it's something you can dream about, and then come back and talk to us next week and find out if we're in agreement on how tight Jay Powell needs the lending rate to be at.
Well, we want to know whether he's going to stay in cotton or go to leather. I don't know. I'm thinking the leather.
God.
Itching. Depends how buff he is.
No,
good night, Ty. Yeah, just to finish on that thing. I mean, maybe because maybe I won't come back to it next week. Is that all these layers, all these financial tools and derivatives and things, to me is just pure overhead, and it could all just go away. But like the eurodollar system, like all of these other financial instruments, the fact that we got them now, it's a big freaking problem because people are tied to them. They're wedded to them. And it's like the rich moving deck chairs around for the rich. And I like to think that the typical MMT investor, the one that might tune into our live stream here, is someone who, is thinking about spending their money. They may invest, they may save, they may do all this, but it's because in the future they want to spend it into, on real goods, or grow their own business and make their own real goods, make their own products. And that's why you're investing. It's not just the fetish of just you're seeing your digits in your bank account go up and up and up while the world burns. So I did basically give that sort of broad overview reply to Andy. So I don't know. Anyway,
Andy, I know you're watching, man. I hope that was a helpful. I hope my little my little spiel was helpful.
It was good. Yeah, it's good. It's good also to have seen watched a little bit of Perry Merling stuff that you
yeah. He's good
because even though he gets
stuff.
A lot of it wrong,
he
explains a lot of these instruments. He goes through them all and it's a bit of a laugh. It's a bit tragic.
You know what's tragic?
Terribly tragic.
You know what's tragic about the whole system? I mean, everyone's like, oh, they're going to de-dollarize, yada yada yada, and I mean, if they de-dollarize, that might have issues, right? But here's the thing, that's going to wreck America and all that sort of. But okay, if the world de-dollarizes, and but by that, I mean, I think a lot of people misunderstand what that means. But to me, that just means that banks in foreign countries stop creating loans denominated in dollars, right? Like that's okay. If that stops, what ends up happening, right? Well, let's actually talk about what happens when a bank makes a loan in, here we go. You want to know what really grinds my gears? This is what grinds my gears. Okay. If a bank in Germany creates a loan denominated in dollars, right? And that ends up going into the European banking system as a eurodollar loan, right? There's now a demand for dollars that needs to be fulfilled, right? Which then means that because we understand that banks are effectively government agents that should be serving the public policy, right? Now the public policy is that we need to make goods and services to export to the U.S. That now has to be stated public policy. That's fucking ridiculous. I mean, I'm sorry, but like that is just you
bad.
Forgot
to bleep yourself again.
That is I forgot. That is just bad public policy.
You force yourself to export to the USA. Good for the USA.
Which then means that they're gonna be USA focused, right? Their policy is gonna be, what can we do to make things that Americans want, as opposed to creating things.
Then they complain. Yeah.
As opposed to
complain out the other side of their mouth that the USA is an imperialist hegemon.
Yeah. They made it that way, right? I mean, they made that decision.
You're making it.
So here's how this benefits everyone, and here's how this even benefits the U.S. Right? Is then you get, so finally these countries, they get off the dollar. The banks can only issue, they can't issue these eurodollar loans anymore, and the banks only now serve the public purpose. So now they're creating loans in their own local currency. And then it can be more aligned with the needs of public purpose for that area, for that region. And so what ends up happening then is they end up creating stuff for their so some of that stuff is still going to be in abundance and still going to need to export, right? And that's still now, instead of just only what the U.S. wants, it's going to be new ideas getting created, right? And maybe the U.S. doesn't even know what it wants at this point, right? Because they don't have to export it; they can just now create for their own culture. And maybe the U.S. does decide to import some of that output, right? So you really are going to spur on innovation. You're going to spur on growth. You're going to spur on progress. You're going to spur on increased production, all that good stuff. Because the world just makes stuff for the U.S. I mean, it's how it's set up now. And then obviously the U.S. is going to have to change a little bit in how it gets restructured, but it's not going to kill the American economy or destroy the dollar or anything like that. It's just going to restructure it. It's going to regauge it. The U.S. is going to find new things to create. It's going to find new, it's going to benefit the rest of the world, because instead of just being consumers, it's going to have to, create. It's going to have to be productive in a new manner.
Anyway.
You get the point.
That ties into one other thing I had on my notes for today. Was I came across this guy with this awesome name, Ho Fung Hung, and he writes the book China, Why China Will Not Rule the World. So I thought that's kind of interesting. Okay, so same thing that we talked about earlier with the ecology guy, the degrowth guy, and the who else we mentioned, a couple of others. Same thing. It's like, yeah, really interesting stuff. And then when it comes to like government borrowing, the debts, the grandchildren,
yeah.
A lot of his case for China will not rule the world actually rests on a lot of that stuff.
On faulty economics.
It's so bad. Yeah. But I mean, it's interesting. He talks about how the domestic demand is not so high in China. So, I know a way to help him with that. Pay your workers a little bit more. They'll be able to buy your own stuff a bit more.
Yeah, but then they can't export it. Then they can't export it to the U.S. as cheap. Yada yada. Yeah.
So anyway, came across that.
Yeah, and I mean, a more prosperous world makes for a more peaceful, enjoyable world to live in too. So even if net financial assets,
the more trading it goes on, the more people are going to sort of trusting or trade is conducive to peace.
Yep.
Or that goes both ways. Peace is also conducive to trade. Gotta hit both.
Oh man, I'm hitting the wall, guys. I might have to say we wrap it up here. We did have one other question, market maker on banking liquidity. I got to tell you, pretty much the question is, eventually will higher rates cause an issue with banking liquidity? I think we're kind of past that. I mean, I know the initial surge, banks might have been caught a little off guard. If you haven't listened to it yet, the MMT podcast, Patricia and I don't know his name, but they
Christian.
had
Christian Riley.
Christian. They had on Warren last week, and I mean, obviously he was spot on, but he really hit on a lot of those topics as well. So that was good, and really I think kind of debunked any fears that we should have remaining about kind of a liquidity crisis at this point. The liquidity crisis is going to start when we start seeing a contraction in the growth of the deficit here. I think that is when we will start to see the liquidity crisis kick into gear, because the real liquidity crisis is public sector spending. That's really what it boils down to.
Yeah.
So.
Really what it boils down to. Rowan Orr also mentioned something about, I don't know if you had, I hadn't heard Stephanie Carlton 7 to 10 years back talk about Australia refinancing its debt by having a negative rate and suspending new bond issuance. I mean, I agree with suspending bond issuance, but only if you supply the currency people need to get full employment and meet their savings desires. So if they did it that way, so I'm not sure exactly what she's talking about, because what paying off what debt, like refinance what debt? You mean, I think, is that private sector debt, household debt? It must have been. So the way to do that, I don't know what Stephanie was talking about, so I can't really say, but I would just say, wouldn't you be thinking just pay workers more? Like, what actually is a fair wage, and institute job guarantee, rather than using any sort of quote unquote refinancing. So I'm not sure I know what they mean. Do you know what that might be on about, Douglas? Did you come across that?
I wasn't paying attention. I'm talking in chat.
Yeah.
Sorry. Send it to me. We can discuss next week.
7 to 10 years goes from Stephanie's probably something I haven't.
To get rid of 7 to 10 years? Is that what she said? Wait.
7? No. I think it was mentioning some talk that she gave.
Oh, okay.
7 to 10 years ago. Okay. About how Australia could refinance its debt. So yeah, I'm not sure what that means. I just pay workers more and stop issuing bonds just because you don't need to. But then you've got to supply the currency to the economy in some other way. So you expand public sector hiring or institute a job guarantee, and then it's all hunky dory. Yeah, up to power plays by the elites. It's all hunky dory. It's like I'm never forgetting power relations in the back of my mind, but I just hate it when people sort of you don't understand power. It's like, God damn, I understand power very well. And I understand education is one of the main powers that we have. Us plebs who don't have much political power, education is a huge thing, especially when it's collectively understood by everyone, this is why I do the live stream here. Okay, I'm not really here for you finance pros and investors. I'm really here to support Douglas. Yeah. Hey, it's getting to the 4th hour. I can say what I want. I'm a bit drunk on actually not having.
Bijou, man, we're having some mic issues.
This is MMT activist leftist extreme ultra-left channel here. Douglas is in disguise. He's a fake investor.
Yeah,
it's all about the. No, I appreciate Douglas giving me the mic here and to do a bit of stuff, and I hope a few more people tune in and can listen to digest their MMT this way as well. It's all good. Anyway, what else have you got?
That's all I got.
Any other questions?
I think I got it. The only thing I have is to call it an end here, guys. I am at my I'm at my hard stop. So Bijou, how about we do this, guys? This is a great week. The best weeks are the ones where I have the least prepared, and this is one of those. This is absolutely one of those. Hopefully by next week. Hopefully by next week we're gonna have some fun stuff to show. We've got some. We got the dashboard we're working on. Dashboard is coming along great. Bijou has been putting in a ton of effort, and so part of that's going to end up being free too. I mean, we want to get some of this data in, so he's putting in a ton of effort. That's coming along,
so including colorblind friendliness.
Yes, yeah, no, that was important. So yeah, he's working hard. We're working hard to get some fun stuff out here just to continue. Because as someone who understands, or someone who likes to argue MMT from kind of the finance perspective, from that sectoral balance perspective, if I can get you guys data at the click of a button to show and to kind of help people visualize how the economy works from kind of an MMT lens, and that it can click that hey, I don't want 2008 to happen again. We can explain it. That's the sort of data I want to get in people's hands and use that. So it's something that's on our to-do list. So hopefully by next week we can have some fun stuff to show. We will. I mean, we're making great progress on it. So we'll show some stuff off. So tune in next week. But Bijou, I know you've got a good outro for this week. So I'm gonna hand it off to you.
Okay. Oh, I need the applause.
I will clap for you, but I don't have it set up for tonight. Yeah.
Okay, well, I was, thought I'd introduce our new fiscal unsustainability conference, and so please welcome Dr. Bijou giving the opening keynote address. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed colleagues and honored guests, it gives me great pleasure to kick off this pivotal conference on industrial economics piping, where we individually and in Spartan isolation endeavor to address the critical economic challenge of our era, the linguistics of translocating tangible fungibles and monetary grab fasteners from economically disadvantaged regions to the wealthier ones. Did I just say linguistics? Someone fire Andrews. I need that speech reread. Not that it matters. In the gold dust sprinkled journey of economic thought, seldom have we had to contend with such a Goodwinian knot, owing to fixed rate Cantillon conundrumification. You'll be aware that the Laffer variety is obstructed by the simplicial deconstruction of the Phillips manifold. At this conference, my friends, we will grapple with the heteroscedastic variability of resource non-distribution and Samuelson containment. And this is no small feat. In the new age of industrial economics piping, we are no strangers to the potential fiscal flummoxation, but we have available the formidable tools of supply-side spaghettification, and we should not forget the utility moxification of Engelian flow tumblers as we investigate the ripple effects of precariat credit splicing across the consumption flow Pareto flanges in resource allocations. And finally, in our workshop sessions, we'll confront the backward-priced layer of Ricardian duplexity trading splunkets, an economic piping phenomenon as elusive as it is provocative.
As we all know, public deficits are grotesqueries that lead to neoclassical brain jam fastening and convoluted neocortical protuberances in the Samuelson area of the homunculus Homo economicus brain stems, and so should be avoided unless a Murphy resuscitator is on hand. We have these on the vending machine dispensers to the right of the conference room exit doors. These are, of course, to be used only on a theoretical conference attendee. Gentlemen, ladies, as we stand here today at the precipice of a new understanding at the edge of the economic piping frontier, as we delve into these adds and drains on the central crank security stock locks and derivative grinders, just remember, every term, every model, every curve is a linguistic vehicle for maintaining political economic piping for the teleportation of wheat-based aerated nutritional slabs in the correct flow direction vector from the poor to the uber-rich. That is our goal in macroeconomic piping. Let it be our sacred mission. Thank you. For more on the conference, we'll have breakout sessions lasting the next. Tune in next week, same MMT time, same MMT channel for the ending of the conference. Good night.
That's great. Have a good night, everybody. We'll see you all next week. Take care, everyone.